And good evening and welcome to another edition of Life is People. Tonight we're going to kind of attempt to discuss humanism. I'm sure it's going to open into a wider debate about many things. Reasons I kind of want to discuss this this sort of topic. I mentioned both to you on Facebook message and stuff. I think it's something we've kind of danced around and talked about a few times, and Rich me was talking for a podcast about it and stuff, and I think it's just something that I don't know. I mean, I was saying to Ryan the other night that it's obviously quite aware in your country, but over here it's not something that's overly even discussed a lot. So I thought it's sort of like good. I know there's a few people listening to this part of the pond, and we can sort of open it up. So I kind of the sort of like the best sort of way to sort of start this off, and I don't either one of you two want to answer this question, is what in a nutshell is humanism? I mean, how would you just sort of describe it in a sentence or a paragraph?
I would describe it, I guess, as human relevance, and based on the scientific method and also skepticism. Basically, just kind of grassroots humanism of live, love, laugh, eat, sleep, work, provide a service to the community, have a family if that's what you want to do, non-aggression. Try not to force things onto people. I don't know. Really, it's just kind of about knowledge and trying to seek truth, and at the same time know that our level of truth can only reach a certain point. So to try and enforce rules, to try and come up with some sort of system and say that this is the best thing, I think we've come to a point where we as a people know that all that stuff is sort of temporary. And there really is, we change so radically and so fast, and especially now with technology, that, standard forms of control just aren't obviously working out. But I guess that was a long paragraph. To sum it up in a paragraph, I would just say it's to sort of non-aggressively seek truth, live life to the fullest, and try to understand and grow with people with a certain understanding that this might be all we have.
Okay. Is there any sort of thing you want to add to that, Rich, or sort of like?
Yeah, well, I read the manifesto, the Humanist Manifesto #1, which was signed into being back in 1933 in Chicago, and then I read the Humanist Manifesto #3. And as far as I know, there's only 3, and yeah, from what I see, everything seemed really great on the surface, but then I started thinking, well. They seem to call for a rejection of anything that's supernatural, which by definition, supernatural just means simply that something that occurs without a scientific explanation. Well, I myself have had experiences that go into that realm of supernatural because there's simply no scientific explanation. So there's that, and then let's see, what was the other? The idea of fair distribution of resources, which I think everyone that I've ever talked to who isn't, doesn't hate humanity, likes the idea of everybody, having enough to eat, having the ability to get through life without having too much struggle. But at the same time, while they call for this, at least in the first Humanist Manifesto, they made it clear that commercialism is a failure, and it just doesn't work for society. So a lot of people had issues with it back in the 1933 because it sounded very communist-like. Well, in the Humanist Manifesto #3, they seem to get away from the idea of, just overtly stating that commercialism is a failure, and just simply saying there needs to be a fair distribution of resources. And while that's a nice idea, I don't think that's a natural state of human beings. Like I was saying earlier, if I came up with a really great idea for fertilizing my garden and I get the biggest yield and the biggest fruit, and I have more than anybody in my area, The Humanist Manifesto would say that all that resource needs to be fairly reallocated. And if I'm an asshole and I say, no, that's mine, and I'm going to charge everybody the maximum I can for my fruits because I came up with the idea, what's going to happen? Because according to the Humanist Manifesto, they're not going to violently come against me to take my stuff, but yet there's not a fair distribution of resources. So it just seems like it's a state of being that it's ideal. It's ideal, but it's not it's anything I think that's achievable in most social realities. So anyway, that's my take on it.
For the most part, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like the second part was very obviously kind of socialist and political, obviously coming out at the time. So yeah, once you start taking things like that into the realm of politics, and like you said, there was no sort of saying of what they were going to do. But again, that's one of those things that is straying away from humanism when it's talking about force, or when I was talking about force. Like, you know, when you're saying equal distribution, it's like somebody basically forcing you to either give some of what you have or receive what you don't have, or expect something that you don't have from somebody else, which obviously is, I don't know, not grassroots humanism to me. But
and then I was thinking, okay, so there's this idea of a rejection of things that are supernatural, and I'll just go ahead and get into the story of it. Back, I'd say about 7 years ago, I met this guy who, well, I had seen him around town, and I say town, I live in outside of a village now, and there's only like maximum 8,000 people. So this guy would wander around looking like Moses. You know, he had this cloth type, I would say like a blanket that he would wear, and he had a big old staff for a long time. He'd just walk around. Everybody thought, oh, you know, have you seen that really strange guy? Looks like Moses. His hair looked like Einstein's, and he would have several dogs following him around. And he was just such an anomaly, so strange that he existed here. Everybody thought, oh, he's just a transient bum. But as time went on, people were interacting with him, and the experiences people had were just phenomenal. They were experiences of some foreknowledge. He would have foreknowing of things that were going to happen to people. He would have intimate knowledge of somebody's relationship with somebody else without there being any way of him knowing that information. He had the ability to heal. I interviewed several people who were healed by him. From sprained ankles, one person claims it was a disease they had. Another person, it just, the list went on, and it's just like, okay, this sounds just really, you know, like a great making for a movie, right? It's just, or that this is the type of stuff people used to talk about that was just folklore, that didn't really happen, but it happened, and I really did interview these people, and it wasn't long after, you know, these experiences that they had. And in one case, there was a friend of mine who had miscarried, and she and her husband were very torn up over this miscarriage. And about a week after it had happened, they came across the shaman. We'll just call him shaman. And he went up to her, placed his hand on her belly, and said, "You're going to have a baby boy." 9 months later, she had her baby boy. Real trippy, right? I mean, first of all, you know, he had no idea that she had just had a miscarriage, and how the hell could he know that she was about to have a baby boy 9 months later? So, you know, that is definitely supernatural shit. You can't. There's no way around it. There's no way science can explain how this guy knew what he knew, how he had the ability to heal. You can say all these people, it was mass hallucination at different points in time. Yeah, right. Whatever. You know, you can make up all kinds of excuses for this not being a reality, but as far as I'm concerned, that was definitely reality. My personal experience with him, I saw him walking down the road, and I thought, hey, I gotta take a picture of this guy, because that's what I do. I love photography. So I pulled over and I walked up to him and I said, "Do you mind if I take a photo of you?" And he said, "Yeah, fine." I said, "I'd be happy to pay you, you know, if you want some money for me doing this." And he goes, "Oh no, I don't think it's right to take money for having your picture taken." And I said, "Okay, great." And I was like, "If you stand over here, the lighting's better." And he licked his fingers and he does something like this to the sky. It was real cloudy and it brightened up a little bit. And I thought, okay, that's just hilarious. And I was like, okay. And then he looked at me and shrugged, and he goes, I don't know how I do it. Maybe I'm related to Jesus. And I thought, well, the guy has a sense of humor. He seems to have control over the weather. He's all this weird shit. And it's like, so anyway, this photo I took of him, it turned out really cool. So there's a couple of fine art galleries in the area that actually took the picture, and I did one that was 20 by 30 inches and had like a nice $300-400 frame around it, and I put it in this this gallery in town, and there were at least, I would say, about close to 20 people who started giving their stories to the person, to the art gallery owner, saying, oh, I know him, I talked to him, this is my experience with this guy. And although I didn't sell the really large picture, they asked if they could order smaller pictures, because who wants to hang a huge-ass picture of a shaman in their wall? It's not going to go with the couch. So they ended up ordering little small prints, like 17 by 11 or 8 by 10s, and I thought, how cool is that? I took this picture, and this guy had such an influence on so many people in this little town that people wanted a memorial of him, something to keep so they could remember their experience with him. Well, anyway, now he's gone. He died a couple of years ago, but the stories that remain and his influence on the town still linger, and it's pretty incredible. Anyway, so, and strictly speaking, I could never be a secular humanist because I totally, I experienced this stuff and it was supernatural, so, nobody's going to tell me, you can't believe in something supernatural because it's not scientific. Well, yeah, sure, I can't repeat this, the whole thing that happened, therefore I can't be, put into a laboratory and experimented on, so, but that doesn't make it any less valid or real. So, anyway, do you have any experiences like that?
I don't, but I was just going to say, based on, my beliefs and when I've had to explain to people some of the things I believe, they kind of automatically assume that, I reject all or any sort of supernatural whatever, which I'm, according to my beliefs, I'm one of those rare people though that, I don't, just because, Moses, the shaman, just because, like you said, he wasn't poked and prodded in a science lab and he didn't go off and prove it or whatever, I'm not going to tell him no. I'm not going to say it's not real. I'm not going to say it didn't happen. I'm not going to try to fight it in any way, shape, or manner. But I think what they're really trying to say is not to be dogmatic about it. So not to basically to sort of take this guy with a grain of salt.
If you didn't experience it, yeah. Absolutely.
Well, I'm just saying, not have one experience and then go back to him this guy knows everything, or something like that. Just one of those, what is it? There shall be no other god before me, or whatever. Or worshiping false idols, or something like that. And not saying he's false in any sort of way, but just, yeah, I think they just mean take it with a grain of salt. Don't, just once somebody gets,
yeah, nobody's developed a religion, right?
Well, Nancy Drew or whatever, or Nancy Grace, I get them confused, but whichever, the psychic that
not the psycho, the psychic.
Yeah, the psychic. She gets to a certain point though, and have you guys heard of the Randy challenge, James Randi's challenge?
Yeah, the $1 million challenge.
Have you heard of that, Rich?
No, what is it?
You know who James Randi is?
Mm-mm.
Oh, he's a huge skeptic, and he basically he wants to know. He used to be a magician, and so many people were saying, thinking what he was doing was real, and that magic was real, and that psychics were real, and he was just they're not. It's all bullshit. And so he started this thing, the James Randi Foundation. And basically they've got this check that's already signed for $1 million, and it's anybody who can show any sort of supernatural power will, we will give you we will have the check ready for you.
Does water dowsing count? Because I can show that.
Oh yeah, I believe dowsing rods. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it works. There's no scientific explanation for it.
He does something. I forget what it is. I have his book Flim Flam. I haven't read it yet, but it's in my huge pile of books. But yeah, he had dowsing rods in there and other things. But he'll provide.
Does he say that doesn't work, or does he say that there's a scientific explanation that simply hasn't been found yet?
Well, he wouldn't say that. Basically, he would say is there anything that the dowsing rod is doing compared to another rod? or something like that.
Oh, well, I mean, yeah,
If
you
that
don't. I
makes
don't
sense.
think
Like
you need rods, so to speak, because I use these copper. They're solid copper wires, and the first time I ever
Okay.
saw it done, I was like totally. And I'm getting off the. I'll let you finish what you're saying about Randy first.
Well, he had the challenge, and he's offered it like publicly because somebody like me. Which one's the psychic?
Well, it's not Nancy Grace. She's the psycho.
Okay, so it's
Yeah.
Nancy Drew, or I think that's
Nancy Grace is the woman who hates everything that doesn't make sense to her. So
yeah.
she on Fox, or I think she's on Fox or MSNBC. I don't know. I don't watch either of them.
Well, James Randi offered her the challenge. She's going out telling people like, I know where your dead daughter is, and saying all these things. And basically, what she was doing was cold reading, which um, uh, James Randi's done many specials where he'll have like a so-called psychic go into a room and just start talking to people about their dead relatives and stuff like that. And then at the end of the show, he's just like, no, it's not real. Like, I just cold read all of you. Like, nothing. No, I don't actually know any of that stuff. And so they've like publicly offered her this challenge, of $1 million, and she won't take it.
No,
But
and I do believe a lot of them are charlatans for sure. Yeah, I agree. And until you actually experience, I think some of the stuff, it's hard to, there's no reason to believe it unless you've actually experienced it. And I think, when it comes to, especially, I don't believe any of this stuff is made for television. So if there really is somebody out there who has some sort of intricate connection to the natural laws of the universe, or an ability to manipulate energies of the universe that go beyond scientific knowledge, they're not going to get out there and do it for the camera. They're not out there to show, oh, look what I can do. The people I think that really have these connections, like Andreas, they have no ego. There is no ego involved. There's a story of another guy in town who wanted to paint his picture. He's a famous oil painter, and he and his wife saw Andreas out walking around. They asked him, "Hey, can I take your photo? And I want to do a painting of you." And Andreas said, "Yeah, sure." And so this guy took a picture, and only this time he insisted that Andreas take some money for it. And they said, well, at least take this money and go buy some dog food. So they walked with him into the store. They gave him a $50 bill. He buys a little bag of dog food and leaves the change with the person at the register. There is no ego with these guys. At least the people that I think actually do have these connections. And I do believe, I'm 100% certain they exist. But I'm also 100% certain there's a lot of people out there who are really good at fooling people. And my wife and I just watched something on Netflix about how laser focused our brain is, and how we're not, everybody who thinks that they can multitask, you really can't. Very, very few people are good at multitasking, and even fewer people are good at memory. Memory challenge. Like if I were, the memory game, it just shows that the majority of people can't remember anything beyond 7 digits. If I start spouting, which is why private keys on a Bitcoin address are a pretty good idea, because there's probably a tiny percentage of the population that could look at a string of 30 characters and memorize them in less than 5-10 seconds, right? So the point being is our ability to understand our environment is so limited by our mental faculties. It's almost embarrassing and pathetic. And we have to have scientific instruments in order to see the things that we can't see and measure the things we can't feel or sense. And I think these energies that exist that some people seem to be in tune with, maybe it is completely natural. Maybe there's nothing supernatural about it. Maybe it's simply they have an ability that they've tapped into, their brain senses, understands that, and I think it has to do with ego too, because there is no I involved with, at least with Andreas, there was no self-centered ego property. It was all strictly a connection with his universe, with his world. Another story, and I know so many stories about him. Like I said, I was going to do a little mini documentary on him, but I never did. One was interesting because a guy asked him, "What do you do when it gets freezing cold out?" Because he lived out in the forest with the animals, and he goes, it's dropping well below 20 degrees right now. How are you staying warm? All you have is that little blanket. And he goes, when I lay down in the forest, two men come out of the woods and they lay next to me and keep me warm. Absolutely ludicrous, stupid. Who would think that? But who's to say there isn't some type of energy that is encompassing, like an angel of sorts, that's doing this? Everybody. I think when you lock your mind out of the idea that there are supernatural events, I think the world's a little less magical. I think you might be more prone to being duped by people that are, fooling with your mental faculties, but you're also cutting yourself off from, I believe, a bigger reality, which is there are energies out there, and they're living. I believe there are living energies out there that most of us can't manipulate and can't understand, but every now and then they surface with somebody, like Andreas, the Ritos or shaman guy I was telling you about. And go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say real quick, like, if something happens in more than one person, it's no longer supernatural.
Yeah, and I could agree with that.
It becomes, and that's what I'm saying as far as, like, if, I'm not saying somebody couldn't be a psychic or somebody could be a psychic, but I'm saying if there was one, which obviously in our society we could easily, say there's probably more than one, because if there is one, then there's a lot of people out there who are saying they are, and there's a lot of people who are fooling people into thinking they are, and so naturally we'd have to assume that there is more than one. So, and just because they have an ability that the majority doesn't have, I would feel that to be natural if there was more than one of them.
I agree that it is natural.
If there was only one transient shaman, Moses,
right,
that would be pretty supernatural.
Right, and I don't think it is. Definitely there are more than one, and I do believe, like in some villages, in our village he was rejected for the most part because everybody was afraid of him. They didn't understand it. We're a modern society. We shouldn't have bums like this. And other cultures, they would have revered him. They would have brought him food as he passed by. They would have, tried to get, they would have revered him. And that's what they do in smaller villages around the world. They don't look at people like this as craziness. But that being said about supernatural, if it occurs, it's natural. Yes and no. I mean, logically we say, I agree with you, but the definition, the scientific definition of supernatural is an event or an occurrence that can't be explained by science. So we still have to say, we still have to say, okay, do I believe in supernatural stuff? Well, if you believe that something happens that that can't be explained scientifically, that these things occur, then yes, you do. You do believe in supernatural stuff if you believe something can happen that cannot be scientifically explained. But like I said before, maybe the tools to explain it just don't exist yet.
Yeah.
But again, I think that is that sort of attitude of we are at the peak of intelligence. There is no science that we can't explain. So to say supernatural on one hand, it might be supernatural today, it might not be tomorrow.
Exactly.
Oh, absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
what we consider natural today, obviously a lot of things were considered supernatural back throughout history, especially, medieval times, what have you. But
Bitcoin, the magic internet money. Yeah.
Yeah, magic floating currency. That would have been, we would all been burned at the stake as witches.
I mean, I think, Rich, you hit upon a key point, because one of the things that I've sort of seen in my travels around the world and stuff is, and I saw this particularly in India, there's a lot of, was exactly what you're speaking about. They had all the look of a wise man. They'd had the long beard, the long grey hair, and they'd come out at the sunset or at the dawn of, when the sun came up, and they'd walk along the beach.
Smoke everywhere.
Yeah, this whole sort of typical mystic kind of, thing.
A boy playing a flute in the background.
And it was all about, which is what I think the interesting thing was, that was completely about ego. Because when you did research the guy a bit further, you found out that it was just all his own ego. He had, like plenty of wives, and he was trying to sort of, basically overcome people's property, and he was just a big ego trip. So I think the lack of ego is the key word you said then. And what I found fascinating when like I said, when I kind of like did my research in this, I was watching the Isaac Asimov kind of overview of it, And one of the questions they asked was like, where did this all sort of start? And he was mentioning, oh, this has been around for, and it was quite an interesting day. He said, oh, for about 10,000 years. And I sort of start thinking, okay, well, we know the Chinese culture goes back to then, and it's the same sort of thing. Then you have, three or four schools of thought that all rose from people, maybe all came from the same sort of idea what you just talked about then, this lack of ego. When you were just saying then about the idea of, like you said about Moses living out in the, having no ego, stripping himself from that. Well, that's completely Tao, in a nutshell. Living amongst nature, understanding that the only way in nature is now, this moment, and we live in this moment. Now, that's what I'm saying. So this thought process has obviously been around for a long time, and what I found fascinating, which was the sort of two links. And I know that Rich, you would be fascinated with this. It was a day that he gave, which was at 10,000 years ago, which coincides to, as we know, we were talking about last time, when we were saying that that was the time that they reckon that massive asteroid hit the Indian Ocean, caused the Great Flood, and and from that the resources became less, and the whole kind of new thought of process came around. So what I'm trying to get to is that maybe, like you said, maybe it does rise in a lot of humans all around the world, but because they've got no ego, because they know that if you do have ego, then you're going to have people following you, and then people are going to rely on your words. And if you've got any wisdom, you would know that's not the way to go, because you just look at history and go, well, I'm sure if there was a man called Jesus, he probably meant well, but look at the trail of destruction that's been left behind him. So if you had any wisdom now, you'd be like, I don't want that. I don't want anyone to follow me. I'll just be anonymous as possible, but trying to then do the things that you're trying to sort of show that you tapped into, maybe by stripping away that ego, you then become ego. It's a very kind of, you get caught in this double sort of cross world, like you're saying Moses gets caught in, because you want to show it, but by showing it you maybe have a bit of ego, and that's not what you want to do, and you get caught between two worlds, really.
That being said, I think you're right. I think the people who really, and it's almost an affliction in my mind, the people who are afflicted with this ability, they don't have the ability to integrate with normal society. It's maybe an ability, of course, they don't want, but they even if they wanted to, they would become the charlatans real quick, because then people would try to use them for their abilities, and I think their ability, I think it would just get distorted really quick, and it wouldn't work anymore. One of the guys who spent probably more time with Andreas than anybody else I interviewed, he owned a trailer park, and he spent a good bit of time with, and his name was Andreas, not Moses, but everybody referred to him as Moses because of the way he looked. But he said there were times when you could tell you were talking to Andreas the man, and there were times when you would look at him and the Andreas the man wasn't there. It was like a void. There was you could tell whatever makes you human was completely gone, disappeared. And and I believe those are the times when he would be in that moment where he could say things and do things that went out beyond the realm of scientific understanding. And there was just way too many experiences to discount. And I know this happens around the world, but and maybe some of these people who, like you said, you saw the people in India, maybe they had that ability for a time. Maybe they didn't. Maybe they were fakes all their lives, or maybe during that time when they were not in that different state, frequency, realm, level, plane, maybe they got swept away with the idea of like, oh, look at all these women want to screw me, and all these men want to give me money, and they don't get back to that realm, but they take advantage of the fact that now everybody reveres them as a holy person, or some type of shaman. So.
Well, it's amazing, it's amazing, Rich, because like I said, when I brought up, I lived in Venezuela, the guy who was, if you want to consider him the shaman, if you want, I don't, in that word, it seems so narrow into what he is, because I don't like that word in that sense, but there's the guy who, was the old wise guy. You had to go to him. He was locked out in the middle of the jungle, in the middle of nowhere, and you had to do a long trek to get to him. He never wanted to come out. It was that whole stripping completely away from ego, and that I think maybe half the battle of this, and I think this is where the two link in, is that I think they're finding it more and more and more, but the more that we do learn every day, is that there's a great link between what goes on in our minds and what goes on in the physical thing. I mean, I was actually this week I was doing some research on they're starting to really find clear connections between like back pain and emotional issues that people have had, and the back pain will go on for years, and it'll spread from the back, and then it'll go away, and then it'll go to an elbow. So now doctors are treating them in a whole kind of, in an old-fashioned way, almost holistically. They're actually saying to them, what were you feeling when you were having that pain? And they're finding out a lot of this pain is completely in your mind. And I think this is one of the things that we're going to discover more and more and more as we go on in the sort of our time on this earth, that we are, maybe the greatest thing we're all carrying around is inside our heads, and it does have a lot of power over a lot of things, which we now would treat supernatural. I mean, it's like one of the things you were saying. If you'd gone back maybe 60, 70 years ago and shown someone some of the stuff we got now, they would have deemed that supernatural. Like, whoa, well, you can cure, like Ryan was exactly saying, what's supernatural today is just common knowledge tomorrow, and that's just the searching of knowledge, isn't it? It's the exploration of trying to get as much knowledge, which is again is in the Human Manifesto. Is that whole idea of trying to search as much self-knowledge as you can and try to weigh up evidence around you.
Well, people are afraid of the wake-up moment. They don't want to wake up. They don't want to find out that something, quote-unquote supernatural, whatever that means, is natural. Freak the hell out of them.
Exactly. It's
the world is round. Ah! How can I work today?
Well, that's what's one of the fascinating things. I kind of understand where you are, Rich, because it's a world I've kind of crossed my paths with, especially living in South America. So I kind of understand where you're coming from, because I have seen a lot of charlatans, but I do know there's a lot of, I don't know, I've seen things on this planet and think, well, okay. I know, and I always come down to it and think, well, that's just my lack of knowledge, because I've seen it, so I know it happens. I don't believe in a higher power or a higher force, but I do understand that we live in as we said before, we're literally monkeys prodding in the dark. There's so much, we're only now discovering that plants can communicate. We're only discovering. I mean, you think, how long did electricity was it like around on the planet, and it was only last 200, 300 years we've actually understood it. It's always been there. We didn't invent it. Electricity's been there since day one. That's what I'm trying to say.
Well, science fiction, dude. Plants and trees were talking to each other long time ago. That's what's funny is what was science fiction is now science reality.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly it. I mean, that's exactly it. The conversation that Rich may have had, and he can talk about Andreas, what we now would do that would be in 10 years' time. Of course. Every human's got that potential to do that. I don't know. I mean, that's what I'm trying to get to, Rich. Do you think that's something that any human being can tap into, or is it one of the fascinating areas I want to get into, or is it only specific human beings? I mean, this is what I'm saying. Is this a knowledge that's open to everyone, do you think, or is it?
And that's a lot of people would say, oh, you can do what I can do. Like I was watching a video where a guy could memorize an obscene amount of information. Oh, you can do it too if you just practice. Well, maybe we can get close, but everybody's predisposed to certain abilities and activities, right? So. Maybe, I don't know if there's a genetic component. I don't know if everybody has the ability to heal somebody else. Oh, one second. Jesse, come on. I thought my dog wanted in. So I'd like to believe that everybody has his ability, but at the same time, I also believe that to have that ability, you almost have to be that person. In other words, I don't have any possessions. Therefore, I am not possessed by any materialistic things. Mm-hmm. And, whatever I need is going to be provided for me by the universe, right? So if I walk in and it's freezing cold, the universe is going to present to me a being or an animal that is going to come up next to me and keep me warm. If I need food, somebody's going to come out of nowhere, or it's just going to be presented to me. And who has that kind of, absolute certainty that the universe is going to provide for them? You almost have to suspend complete, whatever your reality is now, to believe that and to go there. And so, maybe everybody has an ability to come close to that style of existence, but society as we know it wouldn't exist anymore, because if everybody was striving for that, maybe our scientific progress would cease to exist, and maybe because we wouldn't need it, maybe transhumanism, the real reality of transhumanism is to go back to that point where we actually somehow are connected with the actual fields and energies of the universe as they are, without any mechanical device implanted in our brains or on our skin to supplement that, sort of like crutches. But then again, maybe when we do get those devices put on us, they will be crutches, and they'll help us get to that point quicker. I don't know.
I mean, there's got to be something. I mean, I'm fascinated, Richard. There's obviously we've all got a wiring inside our heads that we don't just want to blanket follow any kind of superstitious thing, and we've all genetically got to that. That's why we're in this generation where we're here all talking on the internet. So that's part of the wiring, or the, I don't know, the part of the collective consciousness that we've all got. So that's something that's, maybe that's kind of like a throwback from history. Like, it's basically saying to us, don't just be fooled by, which, to be fair, a lot of the religious books talk about, man. I mean, the height of all magic is not to be fooled. And one of the things that human beings, and you've seen, where it's David Copperfield. I don't know if you're aware of David Blaine and people like this. People are easy fooled by magicians.
Love David Blaine.
Exactly. People. It's one of the things. I mean, it's one of the things that we tapped on before. Especially with technology. I joked about it before, but with the idea of holograms and that magic leap and stuff, it's the ability to fool the masses is going to be very easy to happen. You're going to make whether it's alien invasions or Jesus floating back or whatever it may be, hovering over. But
the sky is opening.
Yeah, we desperate, but it's the point. There's a lot of people in this world, because they haven't got a question in mind, will just fall down on their knees. I mean, we joke about it, but we know that if some of this stuff actually happened, how people would actually, as well as me, how people would actually think this is actually the second coming, and that's how.
Right.
That's my actual fear. I mean, that we do live on a planet where a lot of people, for whatever reason, and I think it works both ways. I think you can be skeptical to the point of like, I'm not believing and I'm not seeing anything that's not scientific, and then you become dogmatic, as Ryan said. And I think that the middle way, or the finding the way, is just basically not to become dogmatic in any sense, whether it's scientific, whether it's religious or anything, and keeping an open mind and trying to be as opening and knowledgeable and question as much as you possibly can. That's how I see it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think there's, to me, to be skeptic does not mean to be closed-minded, which a lot of skeptics have made sort of made the public opinion to be, oh, you're a skeptic, that means you just don't believe anything until somebody proves it in front of your face, which is just obviously a very self-indulgent, sort of selfish belief that everything has to be proved in front of your face for you to believe it, which is, I don't know, absurd. But has anybody seen Stan Lee's show on Sci-Fi Channel? I think it was called Superhumans.
I saw a couple of episodes. That's pretty incredible. It's like Bruce Lee being able to play ping pong with his nunchucks and shit.
Oh yeah. There was I mean, they had all sorts of people that were doing some really supernatural things, but at the same time, sometimes they would go in and explain it, sometimes they couldn't. So there was a guy who just kept running. He could just run nonstop and never get tired. He would do marathons and then run home after the marathon.
Back to the other side of the states. Yeah.
His body just never got tired, and basically they found out that
his last name was Gump.
Yeah. No. Well, that's the thing, though. Is something like that was actually a medical condition that was, I guess, more of a bonus, because it was something like his body. When your body starts to cramp up and you start to ache while you're running or doing exercise or whatever, it's because your body's producing an acid that's going onto your muscles and cramping them up. And his body wasn't producing that acid, so he could just constantly run and never get tired and never hurt. And so he would. But then there was a guy who he said he could slice bullets in half with a samurai sword, or deflect bullets with a sword. And they obviously were like, we're not going to shoot a real bullet at you, but we'll shoot an airsoft bullet at you. So they shot this airsoft bullet at him, and the first time he didn't cut the BB, or he didn't cut the pellet, but you could hear it go ping, and he actually he deflected it. And then shot another one, and he actually did slice off a chunk of this little pellet. And they were like, well, wow, like how he must be, he kept his eyes closed the entire time. And they were like, he's not even like, he didn't even open his eyes to see the pellet coming at him. He had his eyes closed, he had his sword in his holster, and just kept his eyes closed, and as soon as they fired, it would just pull it out and slice.
Wow. Yeah.
And they were saying something along the lines of, what was it? I think they believed he was just detecting airflow within the room.
Nah.
And,
I don't
being
buy,
able to...
Yeah. I think a lot of it has to do, like what we're going back to the idea of energies and living energies in the universe. And the reason why I say that is, it's just like when they say with golfers, don't overthink it. If you're looking down at that ball and you're thinking, okay, well, I need to do, and if you overthink it, you're never going to get the shot. Because once your body has a muscle memory, blah, 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 there's that. But then there's also, I believe, just because of these things, your body detecting this and then doing that, I don't know. I think there's always a possibility that there's a living energy, almost like the Matrix, right? Where it's like you're feeling things that are there that nobody else can detect, and you just go with it, completely without question, without trying to overthink anything. I kind of tend to believe that, but it is fascinating. I mean, I still get a kick every time I watch that video with Bruce Lee playing, the two expert ping pong guys with nunchucks. I'm like, how? Not only are you not hitting it with a flat surface, you're hitting it with a cylinder, and you're a lot better than they'll ever be. It's like, yeah, there is definitely.
But let's go back to what I was sort of saying, Rich. I'm a great exponent for the power of the human mind. I mean, I told you before, when I lived on the beach in Venezuela, there were 3-year-olds who could do stuff with an arrow and a spear, and what they could hit at distance with a spear, on water, off water. They could do cockroaches with a spear. This little spear. And that's just because they got no distractions. They haven't been distracted by Pokemon and cartoons and television and all that. They've just had their mind as just focused and used all that power that it's got to hone that skill. And I'm sure that's a lot of things. You used, like the guy with the samurai. I'm sure it's not like he just picked up one day and it's like, I've tuned into the, some magical force. That's years of practice and honing himself with the art of the samurai and understanding the movements. And if you understand the martial arts and the years that these guys spend just doing little movements, and they become so aware to their body. I mean, I don't know how, I'm a great. I've always been fascinated with the the martial arts, especially over in China and Japan. And, like you said, there were stories of.
Have you taken any?
Of what, martial arts?
Classes?
I used to do karate when I was a kid. Yeah, I got quite.
Oh, just when you were a kid?
Yeah, man.
I was hoping you were gonna like every Tuesday night you did judo classes or something.
Well, that's a different podcast, my man. But what I'm trying to say is, there was always stories then of masters who would basically their whole thing would be they would go eat as less as possible. So they'd get down to the point where they'd eat rice, but that was too heavy. Then they'd eat pine nuts because pine nuts were seen as immortal. Always the aim to be immortal. And there's stories of these old masters being able to float above the ground and do all sorts of stuff. Now, as we know, a lot of that could just be hearsay and stuff like this. But again, as I say, the power of the mind. We as we said before, the minute we sleep, we do all sorts of wondrous things when we're asleep. And I don't know. I just think this is the greatest machine that's yet to be untapped. And I think day by day we're untapping it. And it's amazing. I think that's why I don't think there's supernatural in the sense of. I think it's just like our brains just slowly but slowly switching on to the wonders of the universe around us.
I had the worst. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say real quick, we have to get away from the distraction of TV.
Well, exactly.
And the internet.
The distractions, okay? Okay, television, the internet, etc. Its powers can be used for good. There are good things about sports, but at the same time, false idols.
Well, if we keep saying, and I'm sure if he went, and I'm sure I'm Rich would be more aware to this. If I was to go and meet Andreas now, he won't be watching TV. And do you know the reason he won't do it? It's because he'd be like, It's the old Bill Hicks line, man. It's just you're painting black paint on that middle third eye of yours. You're wasting your time and your energy, honed in trying to get a samurai skill, a samurai sword to deflect a bullet at, in the black. That's what you should be doing, not sat in front of the TV. And I'm sure Andreas would say the same thing. He won't watch TV for that very reason, because he understands it's a distraction. I don't know.
Well, even if you do watch TV, content, and then at the same time, for, like I said before, for every 22 minutes, they're giving you 8 minutes of commercials. So obviously, you're losing a lot of content time there. So if you are about learning, if you are about doing whatever, you're going to want to utilize those 8 minutes. 8 minutes is it builds, especially if you watch TV. Oh, look at the puppy.
This is Jessie Jane.
Jessie Jane?
Yeah, that's her name, Jessie Jane. Yeah, she was scratching at the door. Finally came in, but yeah.
Little cookie. She know that word?
Cookie. She knows a few words.
I was gonna say to you. So when you spoken to Andres then, Rich, what's his? Does he have any kind of not beliefs in the system? Does he have any like a code, or is there a kind of structure behind what he thinks, or?
There are several people I could still interview who had longer conversations with him, and like I said, the guy that spent the most time with him, he said that there were times when you were talking to somebody who was more on the level like you and I are speaking, and then there were times when it was just like you could see him. Hey, how you doing?
Good, dude. Carry on.
Good.
Sorry, I don't know what's in.
So I don't think he had a code. I don't think he had any type of dogma. He definitely didn't go around preaching any type of dogma. He was more just about living, existing in his world the way he wanted to, and just being happy with his, like I said, affliction. He learned to live with his affliction, which it sounds terrible maybe to put it that way, but in a way it is, in a way it isn't. I think it's not an affliction in that if he was living in a society that didn't try to get in his business, it would have been fantastic. But he lived in a society where everybody thought they needed to help him. Oh, we need to buy him a trailer. We need, he's living out and he's a bum. He's probably dangerous. We need to put him in an institution. He had all this stuff that going on around him too. And so in modern day society, maybe it's better to be a little bit stupid. To not have these interactions with these energies that people don't see and can't feel. It's like if you're going to live in this society, you don't want to be that one person that everybody thinks has the secrets of the universe. You kind of want to just live without a lot of pressures and people trying to be up in your business. And so, I think it would. I wish I would have taken more time to go out of my way to try and find him before he died. But just to kind of get a better idea of what how he was when he was in the interview experience. When I look back at it, it's like Ryan was saying. I think in Andreas's world, everything he did was natural. Everything he experienced was natural. It wasn't supernatural. It wasn't anything otherworldly. This is just his life. This is who he is. This is how he experienced life. And in modern day society, that's so far removed from the majority of people's ability to grasp that everybody thinks that, for me to be a good human, I have to go and interrupt this person and tell them, here's a home for you to live in, or, you did this and you did that. We need to put you in an institution where you'll be safe and well fed, not knowing that this person has a connection that most people will never even come close to understanding. Anyway, so yeah, I don't really think he had a dogma. I don't think he was, Catholic, Christian, Buddhist, anything like that. I just think he had one of the rare connections that religions are based on, where everybody tries to give it a name and say, I noticed that he eats some of these leaves over here, so we'll call it the Pineism religion. Or something. It's just people, if he had lived long enough and associated with people long enough, I have no doubt some kind of cult would have been reared up around him and his existence.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think what he was doing was more natural than what anybody does because he's in nature, you know, and people see that as some sort of being, you know, some sort of instability, and they're like, you know, he's not stable, he's not grounded just because, you know, at the end of the night he doesn't want to go to the same place where he's collecting things and stuff and just becoming materialistic and, you know, even by, like, you can call him homeless, but at the same time, he obviously had a home, which was the town. He obviously had, everyone was his friend. Like, you know, I think that's one of the things that'll cut you off is your home. You know, you'll stay in your home. You'll do your things at home. You'll, you know, you will cut yourself off.
The first time I actually communicated with him, I didn't see him. I had decided I was going to go on a midnight jog. It was like around 10, 11 o'clock at night, and I threw on my tennis shoes, and I went running. You know, and I ran about 7 miles up the road, and I was on my way back. It was probably 1 in the morning, and I hear some talk radio, and I'm like, where the hell is that coming from? There's no houses around, no cars, and I realize it's coming from underneath the road near where I was. So I go and look underneath it, and there's a little blanket over the pipe. It was it was one of those big pipes that goes under the road for the water to wash through, and I kind of lifted up the blanket, and I was like, hello? And I hear a voice on the other side, and the guy says, hi, it's a beautiful evening, isn't it? And I'm like, yeah, it's a great evening, and I put the blanket back down, and I went on my run. I found out later on that was Andreas living underneath the road, listening to talk radio at 1 in the morning. So, you know, so it's not like he was completely cut off from being human, or, you know, wanting to understand humans. But then again, I heard from somebody else later on who went to go check up on him because somebody said, there's a guy living over underneath the road over there, and you need to check on it. Well, and I believe it was a police officer, and he reported back that he went to go check on it, and Andreas was down there sleeping with a bear. There was a bear in there that he was sleeping. Yeah, so the guy was a friend of the animals, like, you know, St. Francis or something. And somebody else reported that they had seen him. And I have a picture of him. I'll post it for you later. He could climb up a tree in no time. He looked like he's 80 years old. And somebody said they saw him go over to a tree and just climb up the tree like nothing. Just bizarre activities, you know. Like I was saying, people try to get in his business. Somebody asked if Andreas would sleep in a trailer if a few people got together and bought him a trailer, and he reluctantly agreed. And they asked him later on, how do you like your trailer? And he says he didn't really like it. And they asked him why, and he says, my friend has trouble coming into the trailer. And they said, who's your friend? And he said, he's a bear. And sure enough, they went back, and there's bear tracks in his trailer. And so somebody asked him, how did you become friends with the bear? And he said the bear was choking on something. And when he first met the bear, and he went over to the bear and stuck his hand down the bear's throat and pulled out what the bear was choking on. And ever since then, the bear was his friend. So, you know, believe what you want to believe, but the story's fantastic, you know. It sounds so goofy, right?
And he got half of that, and it was amazing.
Yeah, he's definitely amazing. You know, we were talking, I don't know how long if you were watching this earlier, but yeah, I was talking about how I interviewed probably close to a dozen people about their experience with this guy, and everybody had something miraculous to say about their experience with him. Just he had foreknowledge of things that were going to happen, ability to heal, and then just amazing. Just really crazy. And so the idea, we started off talking about humanism, and when I read the tenets, or I should say the Humanist Manifesto 1 and 3, they seem to not leave room for belief in supernatural events, which, you know, in a scientific world, you'd have to say, well, if science can't explain it, like you say, we take it with a grain of salt and just whether, you know. But in a way, it's like, hey, you know what? When you experience something that science can't explain, and you know you experienced it, you know, embrace it, because that's a special thing, you know, to experience something that science can't explain. And it's not always David Copperfield or somebody playing a trick on your mind. Sometimes, you know, hey, this happened. Yeah.
but you're using a broad term there for science, Rich, because I think one of the things with science, it's science in itself is just a set of opinions. You know, people looking, testing and testing. There isn't such one thing as science. You know what I mean? It's one of the things. It's like science told us that it was no possibility of life on Mars, and then we discovered, oh, there is life on Mars. So you know, science is just another dogma, and it can be used as a dogma. You know, but also science can be set to free. I think that's the point of the Humanist Manifesto, like Ryan was saying. It's basically question everything, you know, whether it's science, religion, everything, and make your own mind up about things, because ultimately that's all you've got. You've got your own mind.
Yeah, you know, and I don't mind talking about my experience, because you know what, I don't really care if somebody thinks I'm unscientific and an idiot. You know, I honestly, that's not going to hurt me. But you know, and so I don't mind putting it out.
For somebody to attack you in that sort of way would just be sort of ridiculous. You know, you're telling your story. You're not sitting there saying like, "No, it fucking happened."
Yeah, you gotta believe this.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't matter. You know. Yeah.
Well, on the Wikipedia page, one of the big humanists that brought up was Carl Sagan, and you know, when I think of humanists, I just think of that dude, and you know, his crazy smile, and just sort of, you know, science, but then imagination. You know, again, he was a big fan of Asimov, so you know, just those kind of guys that it's even the truth that you believe in is speculative.
Mm.
So.
Yeah. Yeah, and notice, I think nobody tried to understand these supernatural things and put them in and place them in a category. They just accepted them as, this happened, you know, it happened to me, this is what happened to me, this is my experience. And they didn't try to say, well, you know, he must have been Christian, you know, he must have said, you know, he must have had a real close connection to the Judeo-Christian God. You know, nobody was saying anything like that, or, you know, in fact, you know, I had some people tell me, well, he definitely was schizophrenic. You know, and it's like, you know what? Yeah, you can call him schizophrenic because he was phasing in and out of this relationship to his universe. You know, so maybe in a way he was, but at the same time, you know, we just have this really super negative connotation to what schizophrenia is. So, anyway, what's new with you?
Gatecrasher.
We had Jonathan.
The illustrious hip hop producer, guru in our own life as people, psychic, here to tell us the future. Big head. Rant and Richie quotes him as being a doper.
A doper. No, this is like, and I'll say this, like I've seen Rant and Richie today. Actually, he was going on a date.
I can't wait to hear his side of the story.
No, it's annoying, isn't it? It's like I like to do whatever whilst I do, you know, try and create a tune. But yeah, it's like whatever. But yeah, doper. Okay, cut off. No, but going back to what Tim said, like science. Science is like, you know, what is science? Like when I was born, Pluto was a planet. Mm-hmm. Halfway through my life, Pluto is not a planet. It's now just a ball of ice, you know, going back. And then now it is a planet. So, like, these sort of official, you know, like, it's what we call it. It's what we just come to agreement of. You know, whatever we like, we can only come to an agreement of what we think something is. I mean, I don't know how vague that. I might have to watch this podcast back and listen to that. But, yeah, that was a little bit vague, but it is. We just come to agreements of, you know, we don't want to scare ourselves, you know what I mean? You start thinking too much. But yeah, that's what, like, I agree what Tim was saying earlier. But yeah, I'm okay. Nice to see you all.
Good to see you.
Well, man, I mean, you would know more than anyone else, man. I think one of the things that sort of like kicked this all off was that, you know, it's all around the world, and you would know. I mean, you know, you've got that Australian connection, and man, you need to, you know, as you said before when you were on last time, you go out into that desert and in Australia, and you realise that, man, science is only an opinion in some senses, because it's, you know, I think one of the things that we've been, I've thought about this a lot recently. One of the things that where we're so different from maybe 300 or 400 years back is that, you know, our observation of the universe is obstructed by street lighting. We don't get to see the stars at night. I mean, you know, you would know, Jonathan. You've been out in the middle of the Australian, and I'm sure same for you down there, Rich. And I don't know what it's like in Ohio, but
Milky Way. You see it all, yeah.
We get like 4 or 5.
Okay. But do you know what I mean? Like when you go out and if you've been lucky enough to sort of see a really big star constellation, you just sort of realise like, we're so, as we keep saying, like we're ultimately just monkeys in the dark. There's so much knowledge out there that we don't really know about and understand, and we can't even comprehend the size of the universe. And so to sort of say that somebody can't do something with their own mind, like deflect a bullet with a samurai sword, to me is very arrogant. And I think human potential is amazing. What we can and cannot do with our minds.
I read something the other day. It was like about time, and it's only like the human race who's made time. It's like my schedule or work, it varies. But it's almost like 11 till 11, 5 days a week. But I have to wake up at 11 and go there. No other animal on the earth wakes up at 11, and they don't go by that. Like some animals are nocturnal, so there is no. There's a thing where like there is a rock that circles something, and we all take this like like you go from 0 to 100 if you're lucky, to 70 if you're lucky. This happens, but time is just a thing that we kind of be like, the Mayans came up with it. Instead of a calendar, there was they built like 12 little dips. So if you stand on a certain point at a certain time of the year, it'll be in between the second dip, which means it's February. And we figured out this sort of system of what what we're in and what we can't control. But then we invented time. We invented sort of 9 till 5. Blah, yeah, but yeah.
No, like you say, man. I mean, it's one of the things that I can definitely testify to that. When I lived on the, out on the beach, man. I mean, my sleeping patterns are all over the shop. I was up when the sun was up, because I couldn't sleep. Then you would sleep mid-afternoon because you were a bit, the sun was too oppressive. And like you say, you're just completely in tune with nature, like Rich was saying earlier on. And you go out to, it's amazing how. I think one of the things that we become too soft. I think one of the things with our cultures, we become too soft, and we live amongst nature, and we all kind of live more in tune with nature, us 4 people here, than some people living in a city. But man, we're still quite removed. You know what I mean? We still got a nice warm fire, and we've got lighting, and But ultimately, what's got us to this point? We as humans can survive on this planet, and and that's why people that do it, as like Rich was saying, Andreas and people like that who do go out and live amongst nature, we as a society have got to the point now where we feel that we have to go and, like he said, go and help them out, which is it's an empathetic thing, which is it's a great thing, but it's not, like you say, it's almost stifling creation, because it's that guy, he doesn't like Rich was saying, he doesn't need a TV, he doesn't need a roof over his head, he just needs leaving alone, doesn't he?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, where did he live? I mean, on that thing, Rich, what was he sort of living in? Did he end up living in a lodge, or was it a cave?
No, he was just living outside, and sometimes he'd be living in a culvert. Yeah, I'm sure there were probably a few caves he discovered too, but he just, he laid down wherever he needed to rest. He didn't have a place to sleep until a handful of people decided, oh, Andreas, we're going to buy you a home. It's not to say he didn't desire, a home with somebody. Like I said, the people that spent the most time with him say there were times when you could see there was that human side of him, and then there were times when you could see there was something else, like he was operating on a different plane completely. And so I'm sure there were times when he had that experience of the more human experience, where he wanted more interconnection with people. He wanted to have the regular home, and he wasn't by any means some sort of complete anomaly. He was somebody that, from what I can see, simply had his feet into I want realities, you could say. A reality that we all kind of share, this mass hallucination that we all share, and then this reality of interconnectedness with everything in the universe, which, you know, that's the only way I can explain it, because he had foreknowledge of events, you know, months before they would happen. He would have knowledge of people's personal inner experiences when he would speak to them that just freaked the hell out of people. It's like, how did he know that about me? Then he would have the ability to heal people. So, you know, that to me is a reality that was in a different reality than we exist in. Because, you know, as much as we'd like to, I don't know. I know I can't just go out and, if I see somebody with a broken something or a sprained this or that, I can't lay my hand on them and be like, hey, you know, yeah, you need a little help here. Let me help you. But I do, after having met Andreas and interviewed all these people, I really do believe, absolutely, there are people that exist in this reality that is way beyond what science can explain at this point.
Well,
so,
you mentioned
supernatural.
But you mentioned then, Rich, you was always sort of like talking about fourth self things. Was there anything that he foresaw about the future of generally of mankind, or was it?
You know, I don't think anybody. I mean, there may have been people who had those conversations with him, but I think for the most part, people didn't look at him as that person who had that knowledge until they had those experiences that freaked them out. You know, most people in the town looked at him as a benevolent bum. You know, they looked at him as somebody who just was a schizophrenic bum who couldn't really manage in regular societies. Therefore, he sleeps out in nature and walks amongst the animals most of the time. And until I started piecing all of these experiences together, I didn't realize just how much he was different. You know, he wasn't just different. He wasn't a psychological mess. You know, he wasn't just a schizophrenic bum. This guy had real connections with real energies, powers, spirits, whatever you want to call it. I don't really think it's the spirit world as much, but maybe. You know, I can't explain it. You know, I'm like I was just trying to think earlier. I was like, well, how would, a secular humanist view this? How would an atheist view this? How would an agnostic view this? And, I was trying to, everybody tries to categorize their own beliefs. And, I'd have to say mine would probably be weak, W-E-A-K, weak atheism, So I live like there's no God, but I believe that I leave the possibility open that I might be wrong, that there might be. So, I think people who... Go ahead. What's that?
There's a South Park episode where they sort of... Kyle goes into foster care, and he goes into just listen. He goes into a family, and they're atheists. They don't know whether they don't believe in God. However, they don't ignore the fact that a God could live. And then Kyle wants to drink a glass of water, and they don't let him. They say you have to drink Dr. Pepper because it doesn't taste. It's neither Coca-Cola or root beer. Oh, no, I'm. It's such a vague question, isn't it? Well, it's just. I don't want to butt in, which I have done already. It blows your mind. It absolutely blows your mind.
From the future, psychic. Predict for us.
Mystic Meg. Tim will know.
Mystic Wig.
Mystic Wig. But yeah, no, I just think the whole concept blows your mind. Well, blows my mind. Anywho.
Yep. Yeah, I'd like. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, Rich, you mentioned that sorry, these are just a couple of questions I got in my head and I need to ask you. Is that you mentioned two things that he obviously died. So I thought the first part of the question was there any way he asked particularly to be, left? Was he cremated? Was he buried?
I could still probably do a few more interviews. He has a daughter that lives about an hour away from here. And from what I understand, she's a physician or a doctor of some kind. And she used to worry about him whenever he would make his way out this direction, and she would try to find him and take him back to Roswell, is where he was from. And anyway, I think even his family probably didn't quite understand what it was he was going through. right? Or what it was he experienced. And so, yeah, I don't know how his body was disposed of. I don't know what exactly happened to him. I just heard from several people that he had passed away. And, and in my mind, I'm like, man, I don't think I would want to live in this world as it is. If I was him, I would want to live like 500, 1,000 years ago, where there wasn't people all up in my business. I could commune with the animals at will. Nobody's going to look at me and say, oh, crazy man,
Well, that was the other sort of part of my question was you mentioned he had the white dogs. Were they actually? Do you know what kind of breed of dogs they were?
Well, very strange. He had one that he called Chocolate, which was like my Bichon, except it had a little bit more brownish fur. And then another one that he called Amarillo, which was a yellow dog. And the very interesting thing about Amarillo is a dog that still lives today. But it spent a lot of time with Andreas when Andreas was in this area. And there's a lady in town who still feeds Amarillo. And Amarillo there's really strange, bizarre things happening with Amarillo. Where people are like, this dog just senses when like the dog catcher or somebody's going to come around and will leave like minutes before. It's just like maybe there's a possibility that Andreas, whatever this energy, this ability was, maybe it somehow was connected, imbued upon the animals too that he spent time with. I don't know. It's really bizarre though, because there are stories about his dog now and very strange things going on with the way his dog acts and the way his dog. Another one was that his dog was severely hurt. I don't know if it was shot or run over, but this person said it was like it was like an obscene amount of short period of time. The dog was like nothing had ever happened to it. It healed right away. I mean, crazy stuff, man.
Well, I found it, fascinating because it's like I said before, one of the interesting things about a lot of the old sort of tales from the old samurai masters and stuff like that, they were always accompanied by an animal. It was amazing how many times it's either a white horse or a white pig or a white dog. It's amazing how that white
devil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It comes even forth into like Lord of the Rings. What does Gandalf ride in like Shadowfax he's called. If you want to know that. Yeah, that's the white horse. There's a symbolistic.
Yeah.
I don't know, but it's an interesting one though because I've definitely seen that connection between, like you say, the people who are, like I say, the guy in Venezuela. He had a set of dogs around him at all times, you know what I mean? And every one of the dogs had all found him. I'd asked him specifically, he said, oh yeah, they're all come in and they'd found him, not the other way around. He didn't go out searching for them. I was wondering, is that the same with Andres? Was that all these dogs?
Yeah. The dogs they found him and followed him. Yeah.
This is the same common trait we're finding here, Rich, isn't it? So it's obviously a common trait. It's obviously amongst humanity then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there is something to that, and I do think that that dogs, they definitely sense things that people can't, and I'm sure they sensed an energy, maybe a protective energy or something around him.
Well, they've just discovered now. I mean, we're saying earlier on about science. I mean, they've just discovered now that dogs are, can sniff out cancer in people, don't they? That's why they put them in certain old people's homes. And again, for a long time, that was like, oh, they're supernatural dogs. I mean, it was like, no, they've just got the sense to smell cancer. That's what I'm saying. What one day is supernatural, the next day is science. It's all about knowledge.
I've heard two things from that, Tim. It's like a mole. There was a mole and a woman's. You've been born with many moles. A certain mole on a woman's leg, a dog would sniff and sniff and sniff, and just wouldn't leave it be. Like when it comes, that sort of OCD behavior. And you just wouldn't leave it be, and then you get that mole checked out, and then what you say there, dogs recognized cancer, and then there's another lung in the breath.
Mm-hmm.
You breathe it through the breath, like the dog. How you'd end up like a human OCD. You start noticing these behaviors. The dog's acting. And then there you go. The dog can smell it straight in the breath, and doesn't matter like what smell or anything. It's that cancerous. It's that thing that they smell, Like, what is it? I was watching QI. I don't know, like in America, you might not watch it. Stephen Fry does this. I believe half of it. You know, it all seems very vague. But they said like a human can smell one part in like a million, whereas a dog can smell one part in a billion. And I don't know the numbers, so don't believe them. But a dog can smell, so fine, like one particle in, and then cancerous, that's.
Yeah, the way I heard it explained is like whereas we can smell a skunk from a mile away, and then when we get close to it on the road, we can really smell it. That everything is like that to a dog. Yeah. It's like, oh, my master's coming. I smell him a mile away.
The nose is built in such a way that, like, even then they move to a certain, you'll see the nose move. I like to watch documentaries on dogs. Well, my girlfriend does. Yeah.
You're all witches.
We're all witches. Yeah. Burn him at the stake.
You and Magellan, Chris Angel.
Yeah, that one's bizarre. Boy, I still want to know some of Chris Angel's tricks. I'm still waiting for him to come out as an alien. He's an alien.
I'm always amazed, really, that we live in the age that we do now, and that's what I'm saying. It's obviously part of the human condition. We like to be fooled. Because people know that David Blaine can't walk on water, or what's his name, Dynamo from Bradford, walk across the tank. We know that can't happen, but people will tune in by their thousands to watch something they know is a blatant trick. It's just part of that human culture. Propaganda.
People still debate if wrestling's real.
Yeah.
2015, we're still debating this one. Like,
Stone Cold Steve Austin got bit by a snake when I was younger, and he's still alive, I assume. Bullshit. It is, yeah. That baffles me, actually. WWF, it was called when I was a kid. WWE now, isn't it?
Yeah, it's WWE. Because after like 20 years, the World Wildlife Foundation decided to sue him.
Yeah. That panda was a fun wrestler.
Their logo had like a panda, and it said WWF, and then the other one was like the wrestling logo. And it was pretty hard to confuse them, but World Wildlife Foundation, gangsta, don't fuck with it.
Tim, I often like think it, like Coronation Street and EastEnders, and
Jesus.
Sorry, let me turn my microphone off. I think we're about to start cooking in the kitchen.
Moses.
I thought I was got some pans. Yeah, but that's how I see WWF.
I'm going out for a quick cigarette. You guys have a little chat.
Me and Tim are going to talk about the Wigad versus Deadbeat.
I will be back.
I don't like to plug anything. Oh yeah, anyway, Tim, you're good. Sorry to again.
Good, man. I was going to say, did you get to the Memorial Day? Did you get to see that? Or?
Yeah, no. Paul was since a kid. Well, no, I don't say a kid. About 15. When you start to grow up and you start to experiment on fucking, you drink your first drink or whatever. I used to go out and Paul's. I lived with Paul for a year. Well, I won't say a year. A just good part of a year next to the. We went to the Bishop, where the demons were playing. The book. I don't know if we have all mentioned the book. You must have heard of the book. Mm-hmm. We used to live next door there. But yeah, me and Paul, my brother as well was a good friend of Paul. He was a big friendly giant. However, I don't know. But yeah, it's a very fucking saddening thing, My way of grieving, Tim, to be honest with you, and this will be on YouTube or whatever. It's to forget. I don't mean to forget and just sound so cold about it, but it's so easy. It's so hard to just think about it constantly.
Yeah. Man.
I don't want to take over and waffle, but it's three people now. My closest friend Cody, my other really good friend Lamed, and now my other really good friend Paul. You know, 3 people. I live in a town of about fucking 4. I don't know if it can swear. No one's told me we can't. But I live in a town where there's like 14,000 people, and I know 3 of them now have committed suicide. And these are my friends that I've grown up with. One of them's a year younger than me, and 2 of them are 3, 4, 5 years older than me. It's just over the top. You know what I mean? It is. Like, yeah. I've almost became used to grieving. Like, this is the kind of black-hearted joke we've had since, when there's the funeral and everybody gets together. You see people that you've never seen in like a million years. Do you get what I mean? A long time. You see people, and then you think to yourself, we should get together more often, maybe. However, your life's too busy with your 9 to 5 or your 11 to 11 or your commitments that you got. And then it gets to Christmas, and then you're like, wow, I haven't seen you in a million years. Wow, we're like, and then someone dies again, and then you end up being at a funeral. 3rd time, man, I've been at a funeral. Well, no, I've refused to go to Lamant's funeral because, like, I just didn't. I didn't want to be ignorant. I didn't want to cause any, like, I was good friends with Lamant, but I just don't like the experience. Which I hope is understandable. It's not because you go to a funeral and there's a million 20-year-olds sat there. There shouldn't be that. Like you shouldn't go to a younguns. You shouldn't. A parent shouldn't bury the child. You shouldn't have a million. A million. I mean, a million is a lot of. It just shouldn't happen anyway. But yeah, I went to Paul's funeral. It was dead emotional. They had a good send-off. There was a lot of people there, and it was, yeah. I don't know how far to go. I like to just not, like, I'm a bit awkward around it. Yeah, I just don't know what to like.
So, are you going to say something, Rich?
Well, I was, yeah, it is hard to talk about those things. I had he wasn't a close friend, but I had a friend that I had hoped to get to know a lot better. He committed suicide about a year ago, about half a year ago, and very, very strange circumstances. And it's like, yeah. The one thing I was curious because you were, they were younger, you knew them well. Was there any? Did they leave any notes? Did they try to express their reasons?
There was one friend, one of my best friends, Cody. And I hate to like when we were see this heart here. We were sat in the pub, and I said to him, I was like, "Fancy going to Heart?" He's like, "Let's go do it." We both had a bit of money, and we did it. And then I went traveling. We were really good mates. I went traveling, and then when I came back. I didn't have access. I broke my iPhone. I left it on my kitchen counter. It got all wet. So I had no access to the internet. And I came back, still had no access. And I got a phone call off my friend Anna, who was his girlfriend at the, was for a long time. And she was like, "Oh, he's dead or whatever. He's done it. He's done the deeds." And then I was like, "I have to phone you back." And then my mate was like, "Stay at my house. You need to stay at my house." And then I logged on to Facebook. And the most heartbreaking bit was I logged on to Facebook and I got personal messages. It wasn't just please, just crying out. Asking, but I hadn't been on in months. And that's really hard to deal with. After after hearing someone's done whatever, and then you look on Facebook and there was a cry for help, but you kind of weren't. I wasn't on the at the time. I didn't have access. Yeah, so there was a cry for access, and then yeah. It's shitty.
That's pretty heavy. Yeah, because then you feel like, oh, you could have done something, and that's just messed up. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I like to choose to just forget. Not being so cold-hearted and forget. I don't forget. However, when you go to work or you fill your mind with I've started making songs recently. You all know recently. I've started I thought about making, Airfix, Tim. You know Airfix?
Yep.
A Titanic boat. I think about making that. This is the music thing. Like, I don't like to call it a hobby because music is a big part of my life, but I work full time, so it is. I'd love. Me and Ryan have talked about this. Just to get paid to make music, I can put my full time on that. But it's a hobby at the moment. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I was going to say, going back to what you were sort of saying about Paul and stuff like this, and just generally about the whole sort of suicide one. I mean, I think we sort of we touched upon it when you went on our pod, when you came on last time. It's just like, I think that's one of the most scarring episodes of any event like that for people who are left. Is you look back and you think, oh, I could have done that, and you like you say, you'll spend time and you'll beat yourself up because you think, oh, I should have looked at that message, I should have done this, I should have done that. But the only thing, as I sort of I try to sort of learn, and it's the same when when I heard Paul had gone, and I thought I didn't know him that well, but all we can do then from that moment on is just, okay, we've all got to step up our game that little bit more and try harder. And like we were saying in the last podcast, have the balls to go up to one of your mates and say, you're all right, you okay, and not just that, hey, you're all right, buddy, but an actual, you're all right, pal, because I'm sick and tired of losing people.
Tim, the second time. So I say, hello, Tim, how are you? And you say, yeah, I'm all right. And then I say, no, how are you? And then you say, your heartfelt. This is it. Naz, I don't know if you've ever heard of Naz. Lives in Richmond. He's around here.
Yeah, I know Naz. Yeah.
He was smashed. And I finished work late, Rich. So I finished work at 11, 10:30. And I go, oh, everyone's smashed. And then Naz came up to me. He's like, how are you? I'm like, yeah, I'm all right. If someone says hello, you say hello back. It seems to have translated to, how are you? Yeah, I'm all right. It's the second. Then Naz says to me, no, how are you? And I'm like, yeah, I'm all right. But I still lied. Do you get what I mean? I still was like, yeah, I'm all right. It's like, everything's fine. No, it's not. I have a £600 count, blah, blah, blah. But, yeah, I'm all right. But it's still the second time. You're right what you're saying there, Tim. The whole sort of calm, the whole sort of male pressure, the whole sort of, you can't just be like, yeah, I'm all right. Yeah, everything's fine. Because it's not. Ever. For anyone. You just have to deal with it. You get what I mean?
Yeah. You
have to learn how to deal with it, as opposed to just doing the extreme thing of what my mates and people you know someone who's done it. It's a.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to talk about it.
And you just can't tell. You just don't know what's going through somebody's mind. And in the case with my friend, there's no way. I spoke to him maybe 3 days before it happened, and I didn't see any indication whatsoever. It was something that was deep. It wasn't.
Alex,
there was no indication.
Let me explain one thing that I'll explain. So I've had three people I know that, right? Cody was we didn't know each other through school. We ended up being good mates. But they were the light of the life. They were the center. Everybody was around. They were the center of the party. That's it. Lamed was the same. He was a skateboarder. He was a really good skateboarder. He was sponsored by Lucky. He was sponsored by Savia. He'd go to the competitions. He'd win. He was a lot older than me, but he'd win PS2s and he had unlimited supply of skateboards. Sponsored by all these big mates, the center of the party again. Paul, again, center of the party. Mm-hmm. But then, now I get to this age where this has happened, and these people have done this. So now I'll meet somebody in the future, and they'll be so vibrant and the center of the party. 10 years ago, I'd have been like, wow, they're not wow, they're brilliant, but the center of the party that they know. Now I'll look and I'll be like the vulnerable.
Yes.
I see them as now I see what I think is when you're young and you're a kid and life's at 1,000,000 miles an hour, and then look, we all grow up like I do now. I have a council tax bill that around Christmas I didn't pay it. We didn't pay it. And because you didn't pay it, 150 quid a month, because we didn't pay it, you owe it all. Right, so I owe 500 quid. Didn't pay that, now I owe 600 quid because it went to the courts. So because I didn't pay it in the first place, I seem to have magicked out all this money from... And it's a constant battle of climbing and not succeeding. And yeah, once you realise that you're not a teenager anymore, life slows down to a halt. That's my view on the people I know who have done the deed. I hate the word suicide. I just don't have more. Yeah. That's it. That's my view. If you understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, one of the guys, that I used to work with, and he used to be my boss sort of thing, and looking back at it, and one of the things I say after the time, you get that old, again in the South Park one, you get the old, Captain Hindsight thing, and you're like, oh yeah, I know all this now, but it's all hindsight. But it was like Wigger was just saying then, you never knew. And there used to be all these stories and the phantasmal stories about how he was in the Secret Service and X, Y, and Z, And the only thing I've ever learned from it, as I keep saying again, is it's hard because I tried. This is the thing with him because I'd had sort of like previous friends of mine die of suicide. And every time you do it and you think, okay, right, I'm gonna learn from that time. And I tried to pull this guy aside and I said to him, look, man, just drop all the crap and let's have a chat man to man. And he kind of broke down after maybe 4 or 5 beers for about 2 minutes, but then up came the facade, carried it all again. Even that, the more drunk he got, the more the facade came up, and how he was more strident. He used to work in MI5 and stuff, and then 2 weeks later he was dead. And sometimes there's, like I think you were just saying then, there are some people, ironically enough, man, which is like how you express in your song, there are some people you just can't reach, and that's a hard lesson to learn. You're not talking about learning a lesson of growing up when you realise that you can't. Some people you can't reach. They're in such a dark place. There's nothing you can do, and that's a hard.
They said about Paul, Tim. They said I went to the funeral. It was a religious funeral. I don't want to talk too much about it. But I don't think Paul was too much of the religious person. It's like, if I would have had Paul's funeral, I probably wouldn't have wanted it. Like, I'm not saying like Paul wanted this or Paul wanted that. Like God knows. Like literally, God knows. If no one knows. However, I wouldn't have wanted it that way.
That was like my friend's funeral was completely opposite of the way I viewed him. The handful of times that we had heart-to-heart conversations. He was agnostic, he this, that, and just way off from what the funeral, which convinced me if funerals are for the living, funerals are for the family.
What's it called? Your next of kin. It depends on your next of kin. Like, so if I was Tim's next of kin, Tim was a complete atheist. Tim was Richard Dawkins, and I was completely religious. Like, it's up to me, unless it's in his will. I'm on about metaphorically here. Do you know what I mean? This is this is like, it's not really up to you, like how it goes, unless you have fated it. So like, when you're this young, you don't expect this to happen. Like they said, Paul, when he was younger, he broke an arm, and then he kept chopping the cast off, and going swimming, and then putting the cast back on, and going home as a kid, and the cast would end up bendy, and it was like Paul had it his way. Paul always had it his way. And then during the service, which I did touch with and really touched me, was like, Paul had it his way one last time. And I was like, yeah, I agree with that kind of bit. But, the rest of it is like I didn't really agree with. And I'll speak to a couple. I don't want to sort of like talk about, for it to be here on YouTube for everybody to, you are not viewed on whatever. But, it was, everybody has their own views of how things should go. Let me just shut my door because my heat is just...
No, well, when you come back, man, tell me about the gig that the
demon... I'll put it straight back.
No, that's what I'm saying. Because, to sort of people unaware, what we're talking... I mentioned it a couple of podcasts to say you're too aware. But the Paul they're talking about was kind of like a super fan of the band The Demons. You know, been at every sort of gig I'd ever been to.
I'll tell you, Tim, when we were younger, like I was about 15, 16, we used to go around and get, like, I say smashed. Like, I don't like, you know, we used to go around like and just, you know, have a good time when we were younger, whatever, this, that, and the other. And then I remember there was one time, like, Sign Dan came around, and Paul, he had this, like, little flimsy acoustic guitar, just fucking threw it across the room. This is what Paul's like, he doesn't mean no harm, he's a massive friendly giant. Just threw it, and it smashed Dan in the head. Like, it wasn't a heavy guitar, but it hit him in the head. And then from then it was, like, quite sour, you know what I mean? It's like, Sign Dan, oh, I don't like, you know, and I ask Dan about this next time he's on this podcast, and Paul, like, asked Dan about it, and, like, even to this day, Paul is fucking guilty about throwing this cheap fucking 10-pound guitar across the room and smashing down on the head with it. Like, honestly, it was like, these are the beautiful things you realise when something so tragic happens. You know what I mean? I forgot about that. And then I said, Dan, do you remember when he threw that guitar that hit you in the head?
Man, that's what I was going to say to you, man. How was the gig that the Demons played? I mean, did you?
I went out on the funeral, and then I had work the next day for 11 hours, and then I finished at 9. I finished at 9, and then went for 1 pint, and then went home. So I can't really tell you. No, I wasn't. I'm not a proper. I like to smoke, if I could, you know, but I can't drink. I drink one night and that's it. I can't carry on after that. I need to go home and sleep.
Well,
so I went for 1 pint during it and that was it.
Okay.
It was all right. The bit I saw, it was good. Everyone was. They raised £2,082 or something.
Nice.
That's a lot of money, you know. They raffled off like my head chef. They raffled him off, so he would to cook at someone's house for the night. And then just people doing things like a bar tab and things like that. They raffled quite a lot off and auctioned. They raised quite a bit of money for Calm and Papyrus. I don't know if you know Papyrus.
Nice, man.
A lot of money. Well, it's not a lot of money, but for us to raise, it is.
Yeah, man. No, I mean, I think going back to what you were sort of saying earlier on, I think one of the things that I think we all find in common, I think it's one of the things about us being creative, is you're doing it, like you just said then, you know, pour your energy into being creative and being positive, you know, and creating tunes and stuff like this. And do you know what I mean? It's what always, one of the things that I was always drawn towards the Demons for. They always openly said this is a, you know, done for respect for Cody. And I was always like, yeah, well played, lads. You know, you haven't just sort of like sunk back into your shells. You've gone out and, you know, put your energy into doing something, and you know, it's really positive.
It's the way of grieving as well, Tim. Like I got told, like honestly, I'll picture it like. I mean, I got to work, and then my girlfriend Harriet, she's in China right now, and she's like, "Have you heard? Have you heard?" And I'm like, "What? Like, what do you mean have you heard?" And she's like, "Paul's dead." And then straight away, I didn't know, right? And then the only reason I kind of got the inkling is because Paul messaged me a lot long before, telling me that like his girlfriend had to like come down, and like I didn't understand what it was all about, and then like I reread it, and I'm like, fucking hell, like I messaged him like, never message me, you know, like never get in that situation. When you get in that situation, just please like let like an auto pong, you know, because I've had it before, like, you know, go to Facebook 2 weeks after, you know, and find that bullshit. That's so hard to put up with, like, you know. Yeah, it's hard to put it with, but it happened, yeah, and it's like I'm just like shocked that it even happened again. You know, it's like that's the third time now. Things happened in threes, no, apparently.
Well, like I say, I mean, it's all about you're doing the right thing, in my opinion, and then, you know, as small and humble opinion as that is, I think by being creative and making, you know, sort of tracks.
It's the way of grieving, isn't it? Yeah, that's it. That's what I'm saying.
Feel free, because obviously me, you and Ryan are aware, but sort of like Philly, maybe Rich and others, about what, you know, open up and tell us what you've been doing recently, because since you last been on the podcast, you've been working on an EP, so please be.
Yeah, this is not so much like this is me learning the software I'm using. Like, I have this thing here. You see it? That is what I make my tunes on there. That thing. That's it. But like recently, like I've like the news has hit me, and it gives you a sort of twist of the tunes you make. It really does, because like you end up in that state of mind, that frame where it's just like, imagine if something awesome happened, the songs you would make would be different compared to the news that one of your mates is just like done whatever he's done. Yeah, it's been quite dark. But Rich, I've just been making like, you know, you heard the tunes that I put up on SoundCloud. I've took them off a little bit because I'm gonna get my tunes masters with you know, Rich is on one of them, Dan, and then Tim. You know that Outside Your House was on there.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just doing the whole EP with all of those. Yeah, you don't know. I don't know how to talk about it really.
But you know, like I say, well, I mean, I can basically talk about it. I mean, you know,
yeah, you say what you mean.
You've got an EP coming out, and basically one of the tunes is called Propaganda, which is basically done with you and Ryan. There's a tune with you and Low Vision. I don't know if that's got a title yet.
Listen, I'm waiting on Low Vision. I'm waiting on it. I've asked him for it. He says he's still listening to the beat. Like, I'm waiting on it.
And then there's also one with you and Johannes from Outside Your House as well. So, do you know what I mean?
I'm proper looking forward to everything about it. You know, the artwork, everything, the mastering, the mixing.
Well, what we were saying at the beginning of the podcast was before we went on. I mean, Rich can probably elaborate more on that, but he was sort of saying the joys of editing. It wasn't exactly something you enjoyed very much, was it, Rich?
No, there's always people think that editing's become easier, but it really hasn't. You know, you have more options, but you always have, like you say, the wait time for the rendering. It's not as bad with sound, but with video, it's a pain in the ass because you don't know if you're going to have something worth anything. You know, hours later, even 12 hours later. You know, if you don't have a super fast computer, you're waiting forever for things to render. And then audio-wise, if you don't get it just right, spot on, you know, you have to go back because. And that's one thing when you're doing video editing for movies. It's like we found out that people are a lot more forgiving of bad visuals than they are of bad sound. You know, so sound is so important to get it right.
I think that's the way you go about it. It's like making a demo. You're all right. You know, when they're like, if I were to make a song, this is what I realized. Like, I was so like adolescent putting my songs up. How many months ago was it? The call them demos, that's fine. However, if you make an EP or an LP or a single, you want that mastered. You want that perfect. However, if you label it a demo, you get away with it being a little bit scrappy. You might know. You probably know. You know, that's why I just want to like put that forward.
I mean, when you sort of like, I mean, I know you sort of mentioned to me. I mean, you hoping what, May, April?
Well, what I did is I watched a BBC introducing thing. I've mentioned to this Lovers like about it. They just said set a date. So like realistically, like you look at it, I set like summer 15. But then it's like to get the artwork back, to send all the 5 songs off to get mastered and back, to get the hard copy. Like, which is gonna have to be like, it's quite an expensive little hobby. Like, and then I have to wait for like, I was speaking to Sign Dan, and they were talking about like a third-party company who will sort out digital release. So you have to wait for that. So like realistically, it'll be further. That's what I'm getting at. But you just set a date. I'll set that date, and then we work on from then. If it gets to that date, you set another date. No, that's it. Just have a date. But yeah. I shouldn't be like but yeah, that's the idea. Summer 15. But realistically, it'll be a little bit later, I reckon.
And you know, I mean, what sort of like, you know, expound to the people the name and the sort of the title of the EP.
The EP, like I was originally gonna go for Dark Days, because I just like I watched a video about this. It was titled Dark Days. I really enjoyed it. I like the cover and everything. However, I listened to what my girlfriend said. She was like, the way I went about it was I write a song. This is what I've been doing with Rich. Is he gone now, Rich? I've been literally writing a song, sending it off, and letting him thinking of melodies, lyrics, overdubs, like the lot. So it was all a bit like, you know, I write, send off. It's up to them. So then how it was like, it's a lot like they're like poets, and they're ranting, and they're you know, it's almost like spoken word. However, like if you were to watch them live, they wouldn't have music. However, you buy a CD, there's the music there because you bought the CD. So like, yeah, that's where I've got the poets on record. Like that's where like it fit me a little bit more. Where it's like, you know, there's no structure towards most of the songs. It's a little bit of just like everybody's sort of just ranting and having their little say. So I was like, yeah, poets on record, you know, featuring Faithful Johannes, Tim Head, Sai, Out of Sealing Demons, Dan, Sealing Demons, and Deadbeat from your beautiful podcast. You know, with Timothy doing the artwork. I'm so looking forward to it. You know, you got my rough.
Yeah,
rough
man.
With the Queen, was I?
The Queen, man. You look like the Queen. Go on.
I was just going to say, I got to head out, but it was good seeing you again, Jonathan.
Yeah.
I look forward to hearing your songs.
Take care, man.
All right, you take care, guys.
Yeah, cool, Rich. It's the same before you go, man. Definitely post that picture you were talking about. You know, you were saying earlier on.
I'll do that right now.
Cheers, my man.
All right, bye.
I'll catch you next week, yeah?
All right, sounds good.
Says and it's just me and you, man. I don't know what happened to Ryan.
Yeah, what did happen to him? I've just sent him another tune. Like we've just I finished the first because we've go on about secrets. We're on about like I was so impressed, Tim. You know, with his work that he did for. Like, honestly, even you said it was like that. Like you were impressed with the work that he did with the tune that I sent him. So from then I was like, I'd like to do an EP. So he was like, you know, yeah. So I've sent him a couple of tunes. I've just finished the tune, the second tune. Not finished it, but hopefully he listens to that.
I mean, man, propaganda is, I don't know, fascinating stuff. I mean, I was blown away by Ryan's. The lyrics in it were fascinating.
Well, did he converse with you with the lyrics? Like you were saying, you'd have like conversations with him about the lyrics. I mean, that was like, I was blown away. Like I got the overdubs. I got like I got it back, and there's this MP3, and I listened to it, and I listened to it about 7 times, like over and over with my headphones, over and over. I was just like, I was blown away. I just thought that was like, don't get me wrong, like Simon, Dan, and Timothy, like they sent me like. There was just what he did with it. What like he sent me like, you know, the overdubs. It just all sounded like it just a bit, you know, that American feel. It really like that sort of like it was just like something like a Yorkshireman can't do. Like, you know, like no disrespect to anybody, but I was impressed with what he sent me. So we're gonna go do an EP hopefully.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, because I'd literally seen the whole birth of that song really, because I remember you sending me the original kind of beat. And then I was, you know, I knew that Ryan was going to do the sort of vocals and stuff. So I'd sort of said to Ryan, I'd always been asking, oh, what have you been doing? How are you getting along with it? And, you know, and then he sort of sent me basically the minute he'd done it. And I was just like, I kind of like, you know, I'm quite aware of Ryan's work. I read quite a lot of his poetry and, you know, his lyrics and stuff like that. And it was just, the lyrics were you know, I don't know. I think the lyrics are just...
Context, Tim, he sent me like earlier, he was like... Scroobius Pip. I don't know if you know, have you heard of Scroobius Pip? He does the same thing. He's like, well, he talks about like instead of writing about like first person, yeah, you write in third person. So you write about somebody else. Like, you know, you write about like in the eyes of somebody else, which he was on about doing. It's a good like system. It's a good system to write a tune. You know, like a good like way. You take certain paths to write a song. And that's a good way, like, you know, sort of in the eyes of somebody else, because then you can come up with like, you know, better like metaphors. Better, you know, the whole idea of it is brilliant. You know, it's all kind of like I'm not so much of a wordsmith. I've tried it. I just don't know if I can do it. Like I like to come up with melodies, and harmonies, but words like the twins and deadbeat. I don't know if I can do it.
Yeah, well, when I was saying that, you know, I've shared this enough time on this podcast. I mean, it was a highlight of my last year was the Mad Friday gig, man. When Si turned around and did Dark Days, mate. I mean, I think it was just basically, I was only just that little bit less excited than you, man. Because when your face was just like you just died.
I did it twice now. He's done it in the book as well. And like every time, like he starts like spitting it, and I'm like, you know, doing whatever. Like I'm like mid sort of. I'm like, hang on a minute, this is this is Dark Days, isn't it? You know. But we're gonna go to the studio soon with Dan's tune. You know the one I sent you, the Demons poem, and Dark Days. Yeah. So we're gonna go and re-record them. After that, I'm waiting for Low Visions. So hopefully it all comes at the same time. Then it all goes off to mixing and mastering. After that, I get my copies back. Get it out, you know, your artwork. Go to digital release. It's just exciting. I'm sitting on something that's like quite cool.
Well,
Not
man,
that it's going to be massive, Tim. Not that it's going to be massive. It's just cool to have something that's like, I just work. All I do is work. You must know this. You just work. 9 till 5. You just work. To have something else is quite cool.
Right, it was one of the things that's been great about the last couple of months, definitely. Man. I did definitely have a little smile on my face. But when I saw that you connected with a tactics and self-assembly rifleman, and
because semi-automatic.
Yeah, man, and that's what I'm saying. This is what I think is great about, you know, what's going on, man. Is I don't know. There's a lot of people who come to me and sort of said, "Oh, I love, you know, that's why I pass you down the line, man, because it's all about connecting people." So.
Well, honestly, after I've like finished this stuff, like I'm thinking about going messaging like these Australian bands because the accent's got like I'm not talking about a comedy feel. It has just like, don't get me like comedy was a complete wrong word. It has like a authentic. To certain degree, like it depends where you're putting it. Like, I don't know where I'm going with this, but like, you have to do one thing at a time. The next one, I was thinking about messaging is the SAR and I can't remember their name now. 2 or 3. What's that? A tactic or something? Yeah.
Yeah, man. I agree with you because there's a tune they do, and he has the line when he goes. Some people say I'm delirious, but I'm fucking serious. And I thought you couldn't do that. Even an Englishman doing it, it's just like there's a punch about an Aussie saying fucking.
It is.
You know what I mean? It's...
You even did the accent slightly, innit? I can't.
Yeah, exactly.
I can't do it. Yeah, fucking serious. Fucking delirious. Honestly, like, yeah. I was listening to that. There has to be like the right thing for the like. There's a guy called FX. And he's an Australian. He might be in New Zealand. But he has like a Cockney accent, and you can't even hear it out. You know what I mean? You can't even pick his like homeland out. You know, which is disorientating. But
well, mate, they're on just sort of like while we're on top. You know, the tactics are on next Sunday, and they're from Bundaberg. I mean, do you know that part of the?
Yeah, Bundaberg's the rum. You get Bundaberg rum. It's rum and coke with a little polar bear. But that is East Coast, which I never ventured. I did West. We did Broome to Perth, and then before that I did Adelaide. Not Adelaide, sorry. Before that I did Alice Springs, which is Central. We did West Coast, basically. I didn't do the East. So, like, East Coast might be a lot more tourist-full, if you get them in. The Barrier Reef, banana boating... You know, that which is beautiful. Like, I'd love to do, but we did the more sort of like desert side, the west. Whenever. However, I have a passport, man. I don't know what I'm doing in England sometimes.
Oh,
Tim,
mate.
I realise like my job's like who I work for, like it's just all shit. It's shit. And then I'm looking, like I've got like 2 passports here. What am I doing in Richmond in England? I could be in Australia. All you lot have to buy like visas and not you lot, you know, but you know, you have visas and you know, I could be out there.
Yeah, man. Well, that's what I'm saying, 'cause it's an interesting one. I mean, like you said, then I've always had a fascination of going down there, but it's the amount of bureaucracy for someone like me to get across there is ridiculous.
Depends. I mean, like my mother went over with like hairdressing. It was hairdressing.
Yeah, like I say, man, you got definitely, you got a golden ticket, as in you got a trade behind you, and you got a double visa, man. What are you doing?
Yeah, no, I do think. I just think that when the weather's like a bit like on the gloomy side, I'm still like I think about my Australian passport, and I'm like, what am I doing here sometimes? But
Oh man, it's one of those things. It's because I think you probably got one of those lucky things. You got the benefit of both having a dual passport, because I can understand why well, it's one of the things we both share in common, man. When you lived in a hot climate, if people are like, oh, why do you want to come back to cold old England? I'm like, yeah,
I mean, the pay over here is not good. Like, I mean, I don't want to I don't know how deep we can go here, but like, the pay over there is like just seems twice as good. A little bit more expensive to live. Just like, what I mean is there's like other benefits than just the heat. You know.
Exactly, man. Yeah, exactly.
There's pros and cons to each, I would say. The seesaw maybe sways on Australia's side. In my view, this is just like the science thing we did earlier. It's just people's views.
Well, mate, one of the things you mean that definitely, when I was talking it's amazing. I was talking to the guest last Sunday and he was saying about how many of his friends, never left Queens, and majority of them either in prison or have been shot. And it's the thing that what you're just saying then is very true, man. Explore as much as the world as you can while you can, man. I mean, do you know what I mean? You're young, man. Go and see as much as the world while you can, because that's what I say to everybody, man. You've only get one shot on this planet, and if you can.
I saw a meme today, Tim. It was like, if traveling was free, you'd never see me again. But there's the whole thing of the monetary system, which means like you have to earn your way.
Yeah, exactly.
You have it's not just like a fact of like I'll trade my trade for your trade. It's like I have to earn my living to do my thing. Yeah, like that.
Well, that's what I say, man. I've met many chefs all around the world they'd all gone to Australia. I met some in Argentina who were living in Argentina to go to Australia. I've met some in England who have gone to Australia, and it's man, for that very reason, because they say you can earn better money, and that's the end of the day.
I think when they do it though, they like what you do. That's it. That's like what over here. Like what I earn is minimum wage is $6.50 an hour. I'm a commie chef, which is not like I work like the sous chef, the head chef earns more. Commie chefs, $6.50 an hour. Over in Australia, I think minimum wage was $19.50 an hour. When I was over there, $19.50 an hour. Like, say a bottle of Coke over here was $1.20. A bottle of Coke over there was $2.40. Like, drinks were more expensive. But I was in a house where I was paying like $20 a night to live, $140 a week. I think that works out as $100 a day I was earning. You know what I mean? That's on minimum wage. I was fine. You know what I mean? $100 a day. Like over here, I worked like 30 quid an. Oh no, I don't know what $6.50 an hour. 10 hours a day, 9 hours a day. I don't know how it works out as, but I just don't seem to live like I did in Australia. Do you know what I mean? Where they all balance out, but just a little bit on the consumer's side, not the.
Well, mate, as you say, I mean, one of the things that people don't, especially in England, they don't really sort of realise. One of the fundamental differences between living that lifestyle and this lifestyle is that you're generally more outside more, because the weather's more,
this is what I love that fact, Tim. I do. I'm such a white. Like honestly, if you look at my underarm, or whatever, I'm white. I'm like so milky white. In Australia, you go to the beach, Tim. Like you, obviously you've been or whatever. Like you go to the beach. It's like there's a barbecue there that you put $2 in, and it's like hot for 2 hours. And you're like, there's a barbecue in the. Is equivalent to a park. I have a park and a cricket pitch. You know what I mean? There's no barbecue in it with a coin. It's like that's awesome. I love that kind of like. What you're trying to say there is it's a different culture. It's a culture shock. My girlfriend's just gone to China, and the culture shock is a lot more like bash in your face. You know what I mean? Because she's used to a Sunday dinner and used to you know, a stir fry. She likes a stir fry, but going to China with real Chinese food, and she's like, oh my god, culture shock. But Australia you go, and it's like a culture shock that's like quite comfortable. Barbecues on the beach.
Exactly.
So I can get used to this. You know what I mean? It's beautiful, man.
Well, and you've got.
I think I'd love to live the rest of my life out there, but obviously I'm only young, so you know you can go be like 80 and use my passport.
Man, and you got the benefit of Australia. This is the thing. I mean, it's in that weather, and they all speak our language, man, which is a huge benefit, man. Because, you know, you can live in the same sort of tropics around the rest of the world. And it's either Spanish or it's some sort of, you know, an Asian dialect. But to speak somewhere, it's all English.
Yeah.
You know, it's a very big benefit for someone like us, man.
Well, that's what I noticed with Australia as well. I mean, they even like the culture of the food is like very Eastern. Because like if you think of England, you know, we obviously with like carrots, you know, with I don't know how exotic we go, like beetroot, maybe pineapple. But you go over to Australia, it's like there's like fruit I've never heard of, and it's all Eastern because like you got Kuala Lumpur and whatever quite close. Obviously not like a step away, but closer than it is to England. Do you know what I mean? You have like wet Eastern food, so close to Australia.
No, did you eat? Did you get to eat stuff like crocodile when you were over there?
No, I think the most exotic I went was shark. It was like literally fish and chips, but it was shark. But then there's dim sims. I don't like it's in batter, and it's just like minced meat in batter. And they don't even know what the meat is. Like they say, like make sure you ring it. Did I say this in the last podcast?
No.
Ring it. You have to shake the dim sim, and if it has a bell inside it, it's like it's got a cat in it, so you don't eat it. I got proper violently sick after eating one, and I never ate a dim sim after it because it was, literally that's the first thing someone said. Always shake a dim sim to make sure it hasn't got a cat bell in it.
Oh mate.
But yeah, I ate shark, which was a substitute for cod.
No, mate, the one that I was saying, the one that when I had George on the podcast, I was mentioning to him, and he'd never heard of it. And I said to him, "Well, mate, do some research. I don't know if your girlfriend's aware. Is she aware of the Chinese gutter oil? You know, where people are frying their food in the oil that's been sifted from the gutter. Have you heard about that?"
No.
Oh mate,
my girlfriend's so picky, Tim. Like she's like, she messaged me the other day, just like, oh my god, I ate fish and chips the last night. She was like, I found somewhere that did. She's at like the tofu she didn't like the most bland. Like if you would have said what you just said to me.
I would recommend, and I said this last time, when I mentioned on the podcast with George, go and watch Vice on YouTube.
Yeah, I do. I'm a subscriber. I like a lot of Vice videos.
Just put in gutter oil, man. See their documentary on Chinese gutter oil. Oh, mate, it'll make your stomach turn. In short, basically what they're doing is usually old women are going into all the drains, basically just shoveling the shit out of the drains, basically put it into containers.
Human oil coming from the shit?
Oh no, basically they're just taking literally spades of the shit and everything out of the drain and put it into these drums. They then take these drums over, they heat them up, so all the oil separates, and then they fry shit with that oil, man.
That's rank.
It's fucking. And they were saying in China, all your street food basically is a big percentage is going to be gutter oil.
It's probably the most purest. No, yeah, I'm alright for that.
Yeah, exactly, man.
Yeah.
Oh man, and that's what I said to George, and I say, man, the lesson you learn from that is don't eat on the streets. But then, I think you learn that everywhere you go in the world, man.
Yeah, Tim, like you on about like China. We had this sous chef. He's still with us now. He's called Gavin. He's come to work with us about a year ago, and after a while, he told me about a story. And he's on about like one of his mates was chewing a kebab, and he's chapping away, and like crunch. Crunch. Now what's that? Gets it out. He's not happy with it, so he goes. He sends off to get tested, as you do. If you're not happy, you can't just go and blame the store. You have to go get a positive. You have to go get a test.
Mm-hmm.
Greyhound, a chip from a greyhound from a race course in a kebab that is eaten in England like a dog. You know what I mean? It's like I don't like. When you think about like Asia eating cats. I'm not trying to stereotype or like, you know, just like group of a bunch of people. I'm just trying to say like it's the norm for other places.
Mm-hmm.
but for a chip of a greyhound in your kebab that you get from somewhere in England is just like, that's wrong, isn't it? That's not right.
Mate, you would know better than anyone else when there's a chef, man. I worked at a hotel for 2 years, so I know what, you know, that's exactly what, that's one of the most enlightening experiences I ever had in my life. It changed
But even
my
if we don't have control over the food that we get delivered, you know, we can control our food that we get delivered. We were getting tins of tomato to make tomato sauce with. We also make the soup out of. It's not like Heinz tomato. It's like, you know, just tinned tomato, seasoned garlic, you know, paste, sugar, and then you make a sauce. But you get it. The odd tin is off. It smells of Parmesan cheese. It's off. It makes the whole kitchen stink. And I'm thinking to myself, what the hell is in this? How can a tinned tomato that should last until the apocalypse? Do you know what I mean? Like, what is in this to make it go off? Like, it's rank, absolutely rank. We can't control the food that we get delivered. You know.
Well, that's what I'm saying, mate. Most chefs that when I worked in the hotel, every chef I knew in that place, you know, I used to say to them, "Would you ever eat a takeaway?" They're like, "Nope." Never in my life would I eat one of them shit, because I know how food's prepared, and
I get sent to you. Yeah, rank.
You know what I mean? Like you say, I mean, that's what I'm saying. I was exactly the same, like, you know, I used to quite like kebabs, and then I started speaking to chefs, and they were like, "What? Well, you're taking your life literally into your own hands, by eating a kebab."
Heart attack in between a pita bread.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And like you said, and then you don't like they used to say to me, you don't know what meat's in that stuff anyway.
Yeah, even in England, you shouldn't be eating a horse in England. And do you remember we were? And like, it's weird, Tim. I haven't got a massive problem with eating a horse. However, I don't want to be told. Like, no, I'm not saying like, oh, we've got like Ryan and that, they were big horse fans. Like, in Germany, they do. I can't remember what it's called. There's a certain like sort of burger. It's like a patty, like what Americans call them, like, and it's like a horse. I can't remember what it's called. But that's the norm. But they know it's horse. It's not like salty. It was beef. And then you're just getting some sort of greyhound, lassie, black, what's it called? Black beauty horse fed to you. You know what I mean? Out of just like complete slyness. Yeah, that's horse.
Mate, I don't think people have got an awareness of basically what food they're eating. I mean, I think this is one of the big things about where we are in our society. People haven't got any idea. I mean, I've been, like I said, fortunate enough to went down in Argentina, and when you actually have a steak down there, and you're like, wow, that's a cow that's eating grass, that's lived, all the rest of it. The difference between that and the steak you'll get from, I don't know, whatever restaurant over here, and you think, this doesn't even taste the same.
Honestly, Tim, like we get delivered. Like, there's a place called the name, but we get our rumps, and sometimes I look at our rumps, and I'm like, God, they look like fillet steaks. Them, you know, sometimes, and then like you get the odd lot, especially from supermarkets. You get them, and it's like, this is clearly like overproduced, over beefed out, if you get what I mean, overfed. You know, like foie gras, force fed almost. You know, like free range. You know, or an extra half a meter per chicken or something. You know, free range isn't like, I look at free range and it's like they can just like walk all over the fields everywhere like Teletubbies did. Like, no, free range is just like an extra meter per chicken or something. You know, then you get another like organic blah 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 free, you know, where they get to venture, and then it's like £17 per egg. You know, it's like like you can buy a burger for 99p, and then you buy a salad and water for like $4.99.
Yeah,
that's where it is. That's where we're at. You can never eat. I even say this, where the industry I work in, Tim, it's like you think that you go to Rustique, or not just Rustique, any restaurant, you think you go to these restaurants and you think you're having real food. However, like, we still have like certain things like stocks, like, and they come from certain companies like no, you know, and like it's not like bones and onion peelings or what you'd use as normal stock. It's stock out of like, you know, like this no stock pots, like, you know, and it's all just chemicals. So you think I'll go to Rustique instead of McDonald's. You think you're escaping these dirty chemicals, and you're not. You're not. Like, you know, like, I don't want to go too far into it, but you're not. You think you are. However, the seasoning and everything all over, your white sugar and your white salt, They're not good for you.
No.
You know what I mean? Reformed things like reformed sugar, they're like cocaine. Any white powder is not good for you.
Yeah.
You know, they're not. Tim, I don't know if you want to stay on the. I'm gonna go to the toilet. I'm bursting.
Mate, I'm happy. Go on. So I'm just, I just want to point out to anyone listening right now. I don't know if anyone's listening, and just to let you know that next Sunday we've got a Tactics coming on. Who, again, I recommend anyone, including my friend Wighead over there, and anyone will go and check out. Check them out on SoundCloud. That's Tactics or Self-Assembly Rifle or SAR, and again both on Twitter. And like we're saying, they're from Australia, and looking forward to it, because as Wighead was just quite rightly saying, he's just quite rightly saying there, my friend. It was they play a kind of Australia definitely a feel to a kind of their own kind of beat and feel that's, I don't know, kind of is a very eclectic, it's a part of English and stuff, but like I say, as you said, go and check them out and find out what's going on, really. Other than that, I'm just gonna sit here, because I tell you, one of the things I cannot do is sit there and talk to a dead space camera. So I will talk until my friend Wigger comes back, and here he is.
Hey.
I was just saying, man, one of the hardest things in the world is to sit and talk to dead space, man. It's like
you're on stage and someone's saying, right, just mic check, and you're going like, hello, 1, 2, 1, hello.
It's one of the enlightening things I realised when I heard all these podcasts, and you see people just sitting there talking to screen. I'm like, they're mad, man, because it's a madness.
They must be reading, man. There must be. That's the beauty of Bruce Almighty. He's going.
Exactly.
He's writing all that stuff on the screen.
No,
anyway,
go
the
on.
idea of Tim, when this EP drops, getting everybody together on the podcast. Is that cool?
Yeah, no, that's a definite one, man. I mean, I was actually quite ironically enough, I was talking to Cy just before we went live tonight, and he was well excited for that as well. I think
it'd be epic.
And I know Low Vision's up for it as well. I can speak to Johannes, and we can all speak to Johannes. But yeah, it would be a really good one.
We can all fit it in,
Yeah, because you can have 10 guests on this thing, so it's. Do you know what I mean?
Well, that's more than enough, plenty.
And it'd be like I say, that'd be well, I was thinking of maybe sort of mid-April, because
we'll figure out when it's gonna. I think by mid-April or before then, I'll know more solid about dates. However, it's just all in the air at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, what would be quite. I mean, that's sort of. I mean, one of my, since you mentioned it, what would be a great idea would be do one while the process is going on, and then maybe one, like you say, late summer, September, when it's actually released.
That'd be a cool idea. No, I never thought of that. That'd be a cool idea, because it's like it's more of like a diary, or like a. Yeah, really, you know what I'm on about. Yeah.
Yeah, man.
The process.
This solely because one of the great things we've got about what we're doing on this, in some ways, we're all going to be collaborating on it. So it's a fascinating insight into how we all do it, really. Which is, I've always said before, it's a shame you don't really hear this stuff, told on TV or in the media. How did Kurt Cobain get that riff, and how did it? This stuff isn't told, and it's a fascinating insight into how.
It's always been the way of the media, the internet. It's always the dark horse. It's always you know what I mean? It's like, you look to the television and you get told one thing, you look to the media and you maybe get told the truth. I'm not saying you do get told the truth, I'm saying maybe you find out the truth. But it's even the same with interviews or with music, you see how it's made. That's what I do. If I enjoy a band, Tim, I go and search like a live performance, what they did, or an interview, what they did. You know what I mean? It's not just like, oh, I like that song, I'll just listen to that song. I want to know what they think. I want to know who they collaborate with or whatever,
Well, I think. God, I,
Yeah.
I think it's fascinating with you just saying then, you know, I mean, one of the things you just mentioned then, very true, man. I mean, if I'm going to get any kind of news now, I will go to Vice because I kind of watch Vice and think, why isn't this stuff reported on everyday news?
Well, what you call it is, wait there, let me hold my can, like, alternative. Do you get what I mean? You know, like, you maybe 10 years ago would have woke up and gone to your 9 till 5 and woke up and watched GMTV or something like that, you know? Do you remember that guy who jumped all over the England floating thing?
Oh, yeah, Mr.
Weatherman.
Dirty, pretty little git.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you wake up, but nowadays that's not the case. Like, I wake up and look at my phone. I wake up and look at like the trending, you know, which comes up on my news feed is Vice. You know, these sort of things. They are fucking the thing of like it's the new media. I love it.
That's what I'm saying, and it's always more shocking when you go to like I say, Vice isn't some backward, you know, behind the docks meeting place. It's a big channel. Go on YouTube, man. Everyone's there. You know what I mean? But what I'm trying to say is, when you see the subjects they talk about, which are usually the same sort of things about how, you know, man's just, you know, raping the planet. You see none of this in the mainstream. None of it. You never hear about Congo.
They don't need to compress anything. You know what I mean? They need to compress certain things over the television. Everything has to be favouring the corporation.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Everything has to sort of like, you know, the economy is in crisis. However, we are building something, and we are doing better than we. Blah 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 blah. The economy, the Fugazi, like, you know, like blah blah blah. Like, we are in the shit, but we're doing better than we were in the shit. Right? Okay. So the outcome is, you know, whereas you go to the real media, the alternative, like the, you know, the internet, you know, that's where you get your real, you know, that's it. Vice. Is that the other?
Well, as you would know, mate, and I mean,
people.
You would know to this, and you can testify to yourself in person. I can definitely testify to it. I'm sure you can secondhand testify. Your girlfriend right now can testify, as George would be. You go around the world and you realise, do you know what? There's two types of people in this world, and basically, just boil it down to a very simple point. But there's people who are okay, and then there's a bunch of wankers, and basically that's in a very small block. You know, there's good people everywhere. There's wankers everywhere. You know, man, people is people. Like I say, life is people, man, and the same people inhabit all around the world. It's just different cultures, and that's all it is.
Yeah, well, we all endure the same path. We just choose to go, like, you know, route A, route B, route C, D. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
We all endure the same thing. We all go through the same thing. Like, it doesn't matter whether you own a corporation that's worth £1 million. You're all going to end up in the same fucking hole in the ground. Like, there's a different way to approach it, but there's no different outcome. I'm trying to think of certain words, but as long as you agree, I feel like I'm getting my point across here.
Well, mate, to say it in a kind of very sort of like, you know, sort of stoic British way, man, we're all basically just shit machines. We all wake up in the morning.
Welcome to a piece of rock in the air that's going to die and end up in a hole in the ground. Yeah, that's exactly the way everybody in Britain feels. Yeah, it's just all bullshit, isn't it? It's just bullshit. But yeah, I completely agree.
Mate, it's one of those things. It's you know, it's ironic to me. I don't know if you're aware of the poem that, you know, the poem if you can walk with a rich man, you can, you know, chat with a poor man, and if you can talk with a prince, and you can talk with a poor, all that kind of stuff like that. And it's kind of like, it's so true, man. It's just, that's a simple code of life. You just basically just go to people and meet each other, and that's what I can't stand about. I mean, you know what I mean? I kind of like, as you know, I kind of like lived up north, and I'm even further north now. And it's like one of the things I can't stand about people, particularly around capitals, and particularly our capital, is that people have this reverence to people. They think, oh, they've got money, I must bow, or oh, they're from the royal family, she's been anointed from God and all this. It's like, man, they're just shit machines like us. You know, we're all just
like, this is a system that we've been born into. It's like you know, you get born into a system where you have to just wake up, you have to be born from your mother, umbilical cord cut, you have to go to school, you have to learn what they choose to teach you. Mm-hmm. So, like, I mean, like, my mother, which I'll send you the link to it, Tim. Like, my mother is like really into this sort of uprising, Illuminati. I don't know how, like, David, like, she's just very into sort of like the anti, you know, corporation, the anti sort of government, which I'm sort of growing to. But, like, you know, you get grown up, like, and you get told to, So it wasn't my choice to be born, right? So I didn't choose to be born. So then you get born, you get thrown into a school. So you get taught about Robin Hood, you get taught about like algebra, you get taught about like, you know, like French and German. Like, okay, yeah, I understand I need to learn like multiple addition, takeaway, division, like certain basic. Like I don't need to learn French. Like I need to learn basic French. I might visit. But how can I go to France if I can't even pay for my council tax or my rent in England? Like, you know what I mean? There's no point in like learning this shit. Like, Tupac wrote a paragraph on this. You know, that was one line off Tupac. Like, how can I go to Europe if I can't afford my rent in America? You know, why do I need to learn this bullshit? This like, why do I need to learn like how to draw? Or I don't even know how to go too far into it. But you know, just like so specific bullshit. Just like you know, graphs. Like I don't know, just so. Like, I sound like so silly. But do you get what I mean? You don't want to get at that.
No, totally what you get at.
Taught how to pay for our how to apply for a mortgage, how to pay council tax, how to like what tax is, the human rights. There's 30 human rights apparently. Can you recite them? I can't. I don't know one of them.
Exactly.
Like, you know, so we get taught about Robin Hood, and we get taught about American history, and we get taught about slavery. I'm not saying that they're not like things we shouldn't know about, and things that like we did wrong, and we shouldn't like when we shouldn't ignore slavery. We shouldn't just say like oh blah blah blah. However, we shouldn't ignore how to apply for a mortgage and whether we're worthy of a mortgage. Or you know what I mean?
Man, that's exactly it, man. I mean, like you said, man. I mean, just basics. I mean, how many people know what money is?
Yeah, where does money come from?
What is money? You know, what's it there for? Why do we have money? What's it there for? If we're going to have it, where does it come from? I mean, and it's one of those things, man. One of the things that I love that Ryan sort of tapped, and it's particularly tapped in that song, you know, Propaganda, man. It's that whole thing of always using words. I mean, I love the one they're using at the moment. Was it quantitative easing? It's like, no, you're just printing money out of thin air, which is devaluing everything around us. But people don't understand that because they don't understand what money is. And that's what I'm saying. And I mean, I was fascinated the other day when I was reading the other day that there's schools over in the States now that they just basically let their kids go outdoors. There's no classrooms at all, and whatever the kids want to learn, basically they're not even called teachers. The guardians around them will make them, you know, give them knowledge around whatever they want to learn.
Very like left wing America though, whereas it's near California or something like. I always see America as a very sort of like strict propaganda, fill your head full of shit. Whereas I see things like weed getting legalized and what you've just said then, and it sounds very hippie and very left wing, very like, you know, like my mother says to me now, if I was born now, Tim, she wouldn't have put me through public school.
Yeah.
I went through private school for quite a bit, but that was just when like before my mum and dad split up. Like, you know, my dad spent through Banner Castle. Do you know Banner Castle?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my dad put me through school there. But when they split up, like I went to Richmond School, which is a public school, you know. But it's still the same thing that they're teaching you. But whereas, like, yeah, it's a very sort of hippie-esque. Do you get what I mean? My mum, like, I feel now if I had children, I don't know, like, I would honestly have a bit of a thought of whether to put them through public schooling or just like home.
Yeah, because I mean, basically, I'm becoming more and more, you know, more of an exponent of that, my friend, because I think basically, you know, like you just said then, you know, we're all put through schools, and one of the things I've learned in talking to people on this podcast is if you've got any idea that you're any way like us, you know what I mean? It's like, I don't know, for instance, put this away, man. You know, you got the kid we all knew, and I don't know what, you know, what names you want to put them to, because I'm sure they're in your school. But the kid at the back of the class, he's making the, you know, the cracks and he's always making the jokes and stuff like that. And what would be the solution to that kid? He'd be like, well, shut up. Yeah, the problem child. Now, why didn't someone just, you know, at some point just go to that kid and go, do you know what? The world is full of comedians. You can make
this guy will be able to build a building in China with earthquakes, you know, and figure out. No, I'm not about that child will be able to do it. I'm about, like, you know, the possibilities of a mind like that. Like, I'm dyslexic. Like, I went through the whole sort of process of you know, can you see a number in this set of colours? Like, yes, I can. You know, you're not like the dyspraxia, you know, and you were like, I'm mildly dyslexic, you know, like your B's. Like when I was at school, I had to have like either purple glasses or a purple overlay because I can read better with a black background and white writing as opposed to black writing, you know, normal and the white paper background, you know, and that sort of thing. And you get ridiculed down to this like point where you're in school and it's like you're in this. I was in like M22 or whatever it was called. And it was like the special group where all the fucking dyspraxic and dyslexic, you know, and you get ridiculed down to this little point. But I bet them people in there, they're going to be the ones that are going to be in gorillas, and they're going to be the fucking architects, and they're going to be like, you know, this is it. And the other people that are getting taught how to, you know, algebra, X, Y, blah, blah, you know, they're going to be the ones on, you know, 9 to 5, like, stately home. No, stately home, I don't mean stately home, I mean fucking working out student loans, that sort of yeah.
But like I say, man, even if they're not, you know, I mean, even just you know, just someone coming along to them saying, "Oh, what? Do you know what? You could be a comedian. There's nothing wrong with being a comedian." Instead of it being like, you know, well, there's nothing wrong with being an artist. There's nothing wrong with being a musician. Do you know what? Some of the most richest people who had the best lives.
It's just more acceptable, Tim, for a guy, or no, sorry, for a person who's in a secure job. Like I saw a meme the other day, and it was like, if you ever fail a test in college, just remember there's somebody trying to be a rapper, like at your college. You know, and then I thought to myself, I was like, you know, but none of them have like a less equal chance. You know, maybe the rapper's a bit of a harder industry to get into. However, like the job you're gonna go do is no more like. It doesn't excel it. It doesn't. It's no more like. I can't think of the word. It's no more experience. Like it's no more like higher. No. You know what I mean? Like you can't judge someone for trying to be a rapper. You know, a wordsmith is a very talented.
Well, then, I mean, at the end of the day, man. I mean, bottom line is, man, it doesn't matter. I mean, I've got no right to tell you what's right and wrong, man. That's the end of the day, because you've got your experience on this, like you said before. We're all on a rock that's falling through space, and you've got your experience. Whatever you want to do, man. As long as if you turn around to me and said, "Do you know what, Tim? I'm now going to become I like to say a poet, and I'm going to become like Eliot, and I'm going to become, you know, the newest, you know, greatest writer ever." I wouldn't stop you. It wouldn't bother me. I'd be like, "Good on you." Good on you. Do you know what I mean? And it's more of that attitude that we need as well, which is what you don't get in, like you were saying, that's what you're not getting in schools, you don't get it in society.
Yeah.
People don't want you to be yourself, man. They want you to be in a box, and they want.
I saw a meme, Tim, and it was like a person going for an interview, and the interviewee was like, "So, what you good at? What can you do?" And the interviewer was like, "What can you do? What you good at?" And the interviewee was like, "Well, I just finished school. Well, I can take tests." You know, what else can you do? You know, you don't get taught about anything else. You know, I'm really good at taking tests. I can do a GCSE.
Yeah, exactly, man. Well,
you know, like, well, what about all the other shit? Yeah, I don't know. I have to learn that.
That's the bottom line, though, as you said before, man. I mean, great. You can have, you know, I don't know. You can have a first degree. You can have a PhD. You can have, you know, A levels and all the rest of it. Do you know what I mean? And and how's that person going to do it any differently when their best friend or their partner dies?
Yeah.
You know, it's not going to mean anything, man. It's just bits of paper that.
Get your experience there.
Do you know what I mean? And that's the kind of things that we all need to. You know, it's
called life experience, really, isn't it?
Exactly, my man.
That's what your mother tries to teach you from a kid. You know, like really, like my mother now, she says to me, "I'll never put you through that sort of schooling system. I would have brought you up." The only difference is through going through schooling system, like, you know, the normal schooling system that we went through, or like I went through, and all my friends, is the social life. Like I will honestly say, like I went there for my social life. You know, I've got friends now that like my mate James, Si and Dan, I met through school. You know, I'd have never known them if I never went to Richmond School, which I will never ever resent. Like I'll never resent the school because I met these people. However, I will never appreciate what I learned through school to the 100% because I went there for my social life. I met the people that I knew. You know, I met people there, and it's like I go back for them. I won't go back to get good grades. I got F in everything, Tim. Like, you know, GCSEs. What do they mean? And actually, I picked my GCSEs, and then I dropped out of all of them, and then I had to do English, maths, religion, and something else. I can't. Art. I think I picked as well. I got F in everything and X in art. But my mum did. My mum failed in everything. She had her own business. You know, what does that mean? You just feel like you don't really need to have paper behind you.
No. I mean, just on that thought process, you sort of like, you know, but I have to sort of talk about your mother specifically. But what is your mum aware of what's going on with like stuff like, you know, we talk about, you know, the decentralization and the internet and changing things and how?
Well, I wouldn't actually. I would like to introduce you because she's into her like. What would you call it? Not a third party. They call it like, alternative thoughts. Now, you know, like, and the decentralized should be very into. You know, like Zeitgeist. Have you ever watched Zeitgeist?
Yes,
yeah.
She's
really into a there were conspiracies. Now it's the truth. Like, you know, she's really into it all. Like, you call it minorities now. You know, like the minorities were the black people. Do you know what I mean? I don't want to be so like, you know, but now it's not. You know, it's like, you know, like to me that's not offensive. To other people watching it might be blah blah. But you know, now it's not. To me and my mother now is the minority. Is the people that are against the government. But yeah, she is really into it. What was the explanation you said? Is she into decentralized? Yeah, she will be, because she doesn't like being like, she's on about like very like David Icke, like it's a one nation. She doesn't, you know, the NWA, the New World Order, NWA, niggas with attitude. Sorry. New World Order, NWO. That's what I mean. Yeah, she's very sort of against this. She's very, you know, sending me links all the time. You know, she's that proper into. I'm going to introduce Tim and Angela Myrna, she's called. I'll introduce you, and I bet you'll conference for many hours.
The reason I sort of mention it, mate, because it's kind of like, you know, that's what I'm saying. Anyone that's, you know, obviously your mother is a bit like myself in that sense, but
you call it a minority. I would call it a minority. However, it shouldn't be. It's not. It's not a minority.
What I mean is, mate, I'm old enough to remember 20 years ago when I was your age, it was a real minority thought process. I mean, this is one of the things. This is what I'm saying. This is one of the things I'm really excited about.
5 years ago.
I would love to be your age, man. I would love to be, you know, in my 20s and thinking, wow, this is the world that's going to come, because I've been waiting for this for 20 years of my life. So I was interested in what your mother, who's probably, you know, probably my age or a bit older. It's just, you know, there's a lot of excitement from us people, because us who, I've been like this since I was in, you know, in my teens. But I tell you, man, it was, you know, you asked your mum, man, it was a different world trying to espouse this kind of stuff in the 80s and 90s and the early 2000s, you know.
I'll tell you, my mum's a fellow art dealer. Have you ever heard of a shop in Richmond called Phoenix Fine Arts?
No.
No? Like, it's near Mackenzie Thorpe's on the thing. She was an art dealer, successful little art gallery, and now she's painting. So I'll send you over the links. Honestly, yeah, she is. She's painting her own. She's had like a month-long exhibition, and like she lives near Cork, and like in like the sort of little villages and towns near Cork. She's had like exhibitions and shit, man. Cool.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I sort of mention it is because that's what I'm saying. You're going to be the first. I really think this is the first generation, particularly, that are going to have this ability to do what you want, because we're going to have your own forms of currency, and I think that's just going to be such a fundamental change.
Bit currency, the MaidSafe. You know what I mean? If this thing actually, like, not if, but when, you know, this is going to be a real, actually, like, shock to the monetary, would you call it, would.
Yeah, exactly, man. I mean, as I said this before, that one of the biggest sort of changes that happened in the last Renaissance is when we separated the church from the state. That was one of the big sort of fundamental changes that happened in the 300 or 400 years ago. And I think our generation is going to be remembered for the first generation is going to separate money from the state. You know, money from corporations, money from all these people. Where, you know, that's what I'm saying. They're allowed to get away with it because they got money. They can go and buy weapons and stuff like that.
Things like anonymous, like, you know, look how big that they could actually be.
Yes.
Like the amount of people that are in anonymous, Tim, right? You know, if you've got to like. I'm not like any part of Anonymous. Like I don't know. I'm not like a big computer geek, right? So like, I want about like everybody who knew anything about what hacking or anything, put like $1 or £1 or €1, and then you've got the people like me or you or whatever. Like, I don't know whether you like who know of Anonymous but just don't have anything to do with it. That put $1 or £1 or they would be super powerful, and like they already are super powerful. But imagine if you funded them. You know what I mean? It's like these aren't. This is not something to be reckoned with anyway.
No,
The minority I'm on about. I'm not on about just Anonymous, but the minority is not something to be reckoned with.
No, I think this is what we're going through now, my man. I think that we're seeing right now, right in front of our eyes, basically people day by day, hour by hour. I see it everywhere. People just walking away and going, do you know what? I don't need this shit anymore. I don't, you know what I mean? We can start our own lives without all this crap. And that's not the revolution. That's evolution. Because that's going, do you know what? We don't need to go and fight them in the streets. We can just walk away and start our own fucking lives. You know what I mean? And mate, I think it's like you say, and that's again full circle in the conversation. It brings you back to Australia because you think, I know that's a great place to go and start a new life. You can literally be self-sufficient over there, can't you?
As opposed to it was 20 years ago, 50 years ago. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And like you say, whereas I mean, that's one of the things it's hard at the moment is where like you said, we just pushed, like you said earlier on, you're very hitting the nail on the head, man, when you said you push through the thing, then you're just faced with always chasing. You're always chasing the next bill, the next whoever it is, and it's just you become like a hamster in a wheel, and before you know it.
I honestly do think this is like it's my truthful, like you're meant to just like carry on with this life and just like just do your thing. Well, what is your thing? It's like you get born out of unjust. Like, did you choose to be born?
Mm-hmm.
No.
Exactly.
You know that thing as a kid? Like, when I was a kid, it was like, I didn't choose to be born. And you smash your shit up and you blah blah blah, and you're like, and it's right. You don't choose to be born, but then you get pushed into this system where you go to school and then you go to work and you pay your taxes. Then you just do this, and you do that, and you do that. Whereas now, maybe like with the internet, we're all growing up and realize like, how many people does it take? You can't just arrest like one person. They go to prison. The whole world pays for that person to go to prison. What happens if the whole world just stops doing whatever it's told to do? You know what I mean? Like the tax, everything. You can't just arrest everybody. The whole thing, sort of thing. Where it's just like, it just can't go on forever.
Man, the perfect example of that, and and I'm quite happy to talk about this because I don't live my life by fear. But the perfect example of that is the marijuana laws or cannabis laws, because that's why I can walk in, and I say this quite openly, and please, I'm not the only one. Go and walk into Leeds City Centre or Manchester City Centre, and you'll smell skunk everywhere.
Yeah,
and that's because
420 is a big fucking deal all over the world. And you've got big parks all over Manchester, all over Liverpool, and they're full of people smoking weed on 420 on that day. I don't know what the day is, I can't tell you it, but it's full of smoking the weed, right? And then the police are like, well, I can't arrest all of them. So if there's anybody breaking the fucking law, anyone kicking off, I'll arrest them. But I can't arrest everybody.
Exactly, man. I mean, it's on the sort of like converse to that would be, I remember. We've always thought that. Well, what happens if, I don't know, for 1 month everybody obeyed every rule? Then what would they do?
Yeah.
I mean, because basically, as we know, the
rules will be shot to shit. It'll be bullshit. The rules will be bullshit.
Because what people
know, Tim, that like how I'm pissed off with what you or Sai have done this year, and it pissed me off. But what I do is secretly just sit there and spew in it, and stew in it. Sorry, and just be like. I've heard of a country that's like every year, instead of New Year, they just all get together and just beat everybody up. Like, if I have beef with the person next door, I just have a fight, and then that's it. It's done for the year. It's done. For the rest of the year, you get on, you carry on, and then next door neighbour, opposite to the one you'd be pissed off with, pisses you off. So then at that point, you could... at that New Year, you're like, I want to fight with you. And then you kick fuck out of each other, and then you go on for the year. And that is such a civil way. As uncivil it sounds to me, that is such a civil... I'm a lover. I've never been in a fight in my life, Tim. But that sounds so civil to me.
Mate,
just get it over and done with. Over and done with. Done. Rest of the year.
What you just described was exactly, and again, go away, do your own research and stuff like that. This has been practiced by tribes throughout history, man.
Yeah, well, imagine tribes like Munship, if you get me.
Do you know what I mean? That's, you know, all through many cultures, it's always the idea that one day a year, you all get together, you all go up onto like a hill or a mountain, get absolutely blind drunk, and you get it all out, all your shit, all your worries, your fights, whatever, and it's all.
Then you wake up in the morning, and I'm the blacksmith, and you're the cobbler. Thanks. I need shoes, and you need iron to work with the shoes. So I have a black eye, and you have a fucking swollen hand. However, we still barter with each other. We still respect each other. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Man. Yes. I'm with you right now.
we found another solution on this podcast.
Yeah, you're right. That's it. It's fucking.
Do you know what I mean? It's just one of the things, because that's one of it sort of ties into what we were sort of talking earlier on about someone doing the deed. You know, the trouble is with all this stuff is it's always the stuff that's hidden away, and it boils up, and it either boils up into, like you said earlier on, anger, where it comes out in an angry, you know, punch form, or it just eats away.
Oh, suicide's still
exactly.
What do you call it? Like a format, or like a platform, or I don't know what the right word for it would be. You know how like it could be MP3, it could be MP4, it could be WAV. It's a different format. It's like either way, like it's people's way of dealing with it.
And it's because they're not.
Like suicide. Like, you know, Tim. Like, I don't want to keep putting it, but like, calm. I watched your pod life that you did with I followed her on Twitter not long ago. Is she called Rachel
Claire?
Rachel Claire, is that right? Yeah, you know, and she's like, you know, she's a woman talking up about male suicide and about man up, things like man up, and you know, and these are so relevant. Like, I'm listening to it and I'm agreeing, and then I'm thinking to myself, like, you know, wow, you've got a woman so passionate she was. And I don't even like, I don't know if it could piss somebody off, but you know, it's so passionate it baffles me, you know. And then I learned about statistics. And then Paul did his thing, which made me sort of like think, fuck this, you know what I mean? I said to Paul, I've grown up with Paul since I was a kid. I was like 15, 16, 17. We started trying like, you know, like drug, you know, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, so you're trying it. But then I remember got to the point where I'm getting kicked out of the house when I'm like, my mum is sick of me smoking weed. You know, I'm getting kicked out of the house. I go down to Paul's house. You know, and like, can I have somewhere to stay? You know, and then I ended up living with Paul, and then you realise how someone so close to you just can just like that's it. There's no like sort of like there's no negotiating. You know, there can be a negotiating point. There's none of that. There's like his way. I had it my way. You know, yeah, that shit can just like take over if you let it.
Yeah.
But then how cold do you want to be until the point where you just feel like, I do feel like I just block it out sometimes, but it's like a grieving process, as Rich and that would call.
But it's like you say, man. These are consequences of people not expressing themselves. You know
these are consequences of people not expressing themselves and thinking too much of. Yeah. You know, like, my mum said to me, please don't tell me it was about money, you know, about Paul. And I did say to her, I don't want to go into it about why or what this or the other, but I wouldn't be surprised if 51% or 49% of it was money. And then my mum's like, in that state of mind, like, you know, like, your state of mind, like, that's so sad. You know, you've got somebody who, like, that could have been the 51% motive to do that, and money is what? What is it? What is the motive? Nothing, really.
Exactly.
It's a piece of paper.
Exactly.
You know, that was maybe the biggest motive. Like, you know, he's got his kid, he's got his this, that, he's got his the other, but the money on top of that has made it 10 times worse. But yet alone, the money was a bunch of cotton in his pocket. And, like, was it 0.5% is real money and the rest is just digital numbers on computers? And you kill yourself over that. You know what I mean? That's the saddest part, as far as weird. for me. And my mum was like, that's the saddest part.
Yeah, it is
Having
exactly.
someone kill themselves over something that's not even really real.
Exactly. And then, do you know what I mean? And like you say, it's all it, I don't know. It's just we keep talking about it. I think the only thing we can do, man, is like we keep saying, is just talking about it. And I think that all the time that we just not talk about suicide all the time or doing the deed all the time,
The
but
awareness is
be
the
aware.
thought.
It's
Yeah. It's not being blind to it, Tim. It's like you could be in trouble, but I would never know it.
exactly.
Because you're just like a man, like I am. You're just like that sort of person that just like puts up with it and goes on. Like, how are you, Tim? Yeah, I'm alright, Wig. No, but how are you, Tim?
Exactly.
Oh, well, I've actually done quite shit this week. It's a second. It's the man culture. It's the fucking man up. You know what that woman said? Rachel Clare, is it? Man up. That's a fucking horrible term.
Mm,
I got that
exactly.
so much in the kitchen. And like they book in 130 people. I'm like, that's a lot of people to book in a fucking, an 80-seater restaurant. Well, man up. That's a horrible term to just fucking, horrible, yeah.
Yeah, and that's, again, these are all just, I mean, man, that ties in what you were saying earlier on. That's the consequence of people being bad ideas and following it through. That's greed, man. I'm not being, I can say it because it's not, I'm not, I've got nothing associated with your company, but that's greed, man. That's trying too much just to make a bit more money at the end of the week so they can have.
It's full of that.
And it's, I don't know, man. It's the world is full. Me and Ryan talk about it all the time. The world is full of bad ideas.
Right, is all about money. Valentine's Day, New Year's Eve, right? You go to a restaurant. We'll leave in a minute. I don't want to waffle on. But you go to a restaurant on New Year's Eve. You want to be there for all night, yeah? You want to be there all night. You want to be there till 8 till 1 because you want to enjoy 12 o'clock at the restaurant. My boss is a year older than me and is money orientated. Money. It's like we'll have 2 sit-ins. So we'll have 2 sit-ins on New Year's Eve. So you've got to chuck people out at 9 o'clock and get another load of people in at 8 o'clock. And the whole system's wrong. And what it is, Tim, is it is all about money. I put money into this restaurant. I want to take money out of it. Not I put money into this restaurant. I have a manager who manages it. I have a chef who manages it. And I will take what is ample, what is available to take from the restaurant, not overbook it. I don't want to go on about it. I'm not going on about chefing here or like management. I'm just on about money. You know what I mean? Yeah. These are people who are money orientated. Money. I put money in. I'll take money out.
Yeah. I mean that's. Yeah, like I say, man, that's any industry. You're just giving an example. Like I say, that could apply for anything and
every industry. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And goes back to that thing, man. We talk about it all the time, man. It's that lack of empathy for another human being.
Passion, a lack of. It is passion. I enjoy it, so I want the best. No. I put money in, so I want money out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, well, man. I mean, sort of like.
Let's get to an end.
Yeah, I mean, sort of like just to generally sort of say, we definitely have we're gonna, we'll sort of give you a heads up now. This is, between me and you now. We can do like I say, mid-April. We'll do a super podcast of the.
I'd love to.
You know what I mean? We'll definitely get that one going. And I say this, we tend to talk about you quite a bit on most podcasts, and your name and Stealing Demon's name tend to come up every week. But again, to everyone out there and anyone listening to this randomly or whatever, man, as you sort of like were witnessed in the times when you've been on, feel free to contact, our friend Wigger, because he'll definitely always open to collaboration. And on that one, I know that. He was talking to me the other day. I know No BS wants you to get in contact with him and stuff. So
yeah, man, he's slow. He's just slow with it, man. I don't want to I love BS, and I've sent him the beats. He's just slow with the reply, and I get busy with other things. Sorry to butt in. Sorry.
No, that's what I'm saying. But what I'm trying to say, this is a perfect example of what I'm trying to say. So if anyone out there listening now or in the future wants to contact, as I said before, find him on SafeCloud, Twitter, Facebook, just put Wighead, you'll find him. And like I say, he's always open to collaboration. And like I said, we'll definitely we'll get you back on in mid-April sometime. We'll do a super podcast.
We'll have a super collab with the people who really mean to talk. You know what I mean? I just make the beats. People
Man,
like Sam and Tim and Ryan are the people who will give the heart out.
I'm gonna because I usually because he's not here tonight because he's having technical issues, man.
Well, I don't know. He's got a technical issue.
I know, man, I know. But I'm not gonna put you on the spot here, man. But I'm gonna sort of leave the final word with you, man. So yeah, the final word's yours, man. Whatever you want to say, and then
Well, I can say, you know, my new EP. Like I've tried to make my own EP. You know, I'm getting there. So we're collaborating with quite a few people. I've got like Ryan, aka Deadbeat, who works on this EP. Works on this Life Is People every week. You know, I got Sai, Sealing, Dan Demon from the Sealing Demons, you know, and then, you know, we should fucking love this EP soon. Hopefully, you know, we'll have it EP, we'll have it mixed, mastered, and then we'll see you soon.
Perfect, man.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry for fucking gate crashing.
Man, anytime you want a gate crash, you're always welcome. And with that, I'll say life is people, people.